Hello. Good evening, everyone. I now declare the December Council meeting open at 6:30 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance and those watching on the live stream. Sorry about that, just making sure my phone was switched off. I now invite Councillor Hung to read the acknowledgement to country.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The City of Melville acknowledges the Bilbon people as the traditional owners of the land on which the city stands today and pays its respect to the Whadjuk people and elders both past and present.
I draw your attention to the disclaimer on the screen. The affirmation of civic duty and responsibility on the screen. The advice of audio-visual live streaming and recording on the screen. If there's anyone in the public gallery that wishes to ask a question and has not already submitted it, please complete a public question form, time form, and they can be found to the table on your left at the front of the public gallery. Please hand the completed form to a member of governance prior to public question time commencing. So we have the following councillors attending electronically. No, there are none. Sorry, no, there are none. And there are no apologies. And finally, I advise that the Mayor and Councillor Ross are on approved leaves of absence. I'll start the meeting tonight with a couple of items, the first being the recent 16 Days in WA campaign. 16 Days in WA was born from the United Nations declared day for the elimination of violence against women on November 25th, and it ends today, the 10th of December, Human Rights Day. And this marks the 8th year of the 16 Days in WA campaign in Western Australia. During this campaign, people were asked to wear orange to raise awareness and take action against violence against women and children. This year's theme, Play Your Part, is a reminder that we all have a role to play in educating, motivating and advocating within our community to end violence. At the Agenda Briefing Forum last week, I had the pleasure of announcing that the City of Melville was the recipient of a $15 million grant under the Federal Government's Thriving Suburbs program for the Library and Cultural Centre, LCC. This will be the largest and most significant project undertaken by the City, and it will be an iconic facility for our community. Our vision is for a centre where the community can gather, engage and enrich their lives, a place that is safe, trusted, accessible and inspiring. The LCC will replace the existing Civic Square Library to create a cultural destination and focal point that anchors the wider precinct, including the city centre and nearby Yagan-Myer Wireless Hill. The CEO and I had the opportunity to personally express our appreciation to the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, this is very long, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, the Honourable Catherine King, and the Member for Tangney, Sam Lim, for their support for this project, which celebrates our diverse and vibrant community. We now move on to declarations by members. Are there any declarations by members, who have not read and given due consideration to all matters contained in the business papers presented before the meeting? Nope, there are none. And any declarations by members who have received and not read the elected members' bulletin? Nope, thank you. No deputations have been approved for tonight. We've had one written submission that has been approved from Mr. Graham Jenke of Mr. G. Jenke, from Applecross, in relation to item UP 2457, proposed reclassification of lots 2574 and 2335, 4 to 6 Almondbury Road, Ardross, from public open space to a A-class reserve. Notice of motion. This information has been circulated ahead of the meeting to elected members, and a copy will be included in the minutes of the meeting, so thank you. Can the Head of Governance please advise if there are any disclosures of interest for this evening?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, and through you, we have a disclosure of interest from Councillor Jane Edinger in relation to item UP 2455, review of LPP 1.4, provision of public art in development proposals. Councillor Edinger is declaring an impartiality interest and will remain in the meeting. Councillor Edinger is also declaring an interest in item C2422, RFT 242503, men's shed refurbishment. Councillor Edinger is declaring a financial interest and will leave the meeting. Councillor Edinger is also declaring an interest in item C24223, P242501, pre-qualified panel for the supply of refurbishment services. Again, Councillor Edinger is declaring a financial interest and will leave the meeting. Councillor Edinger is also declaring an interest in item E2457, Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project Lending Facility. Councillor Edinger is declaring a financial interest and is seeking the permission of Council to stay and discuss this matter. Councillor Wheatland, the Deputy Mayor, is also declaring an interest in item E2457, Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project Lending Facility. Councillor Wheatland is also declaring a financial interest and seeking the permission of the Council to stay and discuss this item. Councillor Lee is declaring an interest in item UP 2454, the Canning Bridge Precinct Review request for further information. Councillor Lee is declaring a proximity interest and will leave the meeting. And finally, we have a disclosure of interest from the CEO, Ms Bowman, in relation to item M24232, Quarterly Report, CEO Key Performance Indicators and Council Plan for the Future 2024 to 2034. Ms Bowman is declaring an impartiality interest and will remain in the meeting. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any further disclosures from elected members? No. Thank you. I advise that 15 minutes is allocated for public question time. Each questioner will have 2 minutes to ask their question and any follow-up question. Please be respectful and do not use offensive or derogatory language or make false and misleading statements while speaking, or I will ask you to return to your seat. I now open public question time at 18:38. A number of questions have been received with notice this evening, and if we have the question asker here in the meeting or have a representative to ask the question, could you please make your way to the microphone to ask your question when called? If there is no one in the audience to ask the question and the question is not taken on notice, the question and response will be provided in the minutes, which will be available to the public on Friday, 13th of December. We've got Mr. C. Catucci of Ardros. Would you like to come forward and ask your questions? Just press the button on the right.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I have submitted, let's say, my concern related to the LP6 snapshot. I received a reply and I gave another feedback. So I'm just summarizing a few points and expect, let's say, a feedback. I don't know if it is a question. So thank you, Mr. Ponton, for your response to my concern regarding the local planning scheme. LPS6 review. Well, I appreciate your effort to address this issue. I believe there are critical areas where the response falls short, particularly in acknowledging and integrating public concern into the planning process. So I believe that into the LPS6 review, the following has not been clearly grasped by this council and the people working around it. It is important to recognize that the proposed zoning changes are not driven by residents. request, but are part of a broader strategic planning initiative such as the Perten Pillar 3.5 million framework. This framework aims to accommodate significant population growth by 2050, 40% dwelling and people increase, necessitating increased density in certain areas. However, the community has not requested for population growth and has natural concern about these changes, ranging from traffic, congestion, change of character and environmental impact, and this must be proactively addressed. The city should prioritize this concern in all studies, publications, and updates, ensuring they are central. I need to repeat, they are central, because this has not occurred so far, okay? So now, there are other points that I've developed in detail. There is no time, so I will just touch them. So, acknowledgement of public concern related to traffic. Traffic concerns were completely absent. I need to repeat, absent. The traffic word was absent from the snapshot. Okay. Transparency in reporting. The explanation provided for the removal or invalid submission, such as duplicate and blanks, is noted, but there was no explanation. Completely lack of transparency.
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Catucci, your time's up. Would we like to extend the question time? Can we summarise it?
Yeah. So
please,
integration of
thank you.
petition, perception of bias, complete destruction of public confidence in the communication. Okay, so I have asked for some proactive improvement and the way forward. Okay, I have submitted my further reply. I hope that finally there will be some, understanding that the people naturally, react to changes. It's natural in human beings. So if you don't acknowledge this, you make a big mistake. We pay your salaries, right? Not the central government.
Mr. Catucci, we'll have Mr. Varelis respond to your questions. Would you like to turn the microphone off, please? Someone? Yeah, thanks. Mr. Varelis?
Through the chair, thank you for your questions and statements. The city has provided detailed responses to the various questions that you've posed. They will be put in writing as part of the minutes, and we encourage you to continue to engage with the city. We do hear your concerns. We understand the issues. The city has embarked on a preliminary consultation process for this exact reason, and these issues that have been raised will be considered through the more statutory and formal process of consultation that will occur later next year. I do stress that the ideas and the rezonings that were put to the community as part of the preliminary consultation are exactly that. They are preliminary in nature. We hear you, and we will review your feedback and respond accordingly with a plan that will be presented to council for adoption for formal public consultation in a statutory setting. The earlier consultation was informal consultation to understand what communities' thoughts and views are around these ideas, but the formal statutory process will occur later next year, and we ask that you continue to engage with the city on that. And when that formal statutory process commences and council ultimately adopt a plan for the purposes of public advertising, that will also required to be certified by the West Australian Planning Commission before that plan seeks public comment. The planning system is set up in such a way that council has a role to play, but in council playing that role, it requires certification from the Planning Commission before plans become draft statutory plans. So there is a significant process with more touch points for community to review what the ideas are and what the draft statutory plans will be. And if there's concerns of an environmental traffic nature, they can be raised in that more formal consultation and be considered not only by council, but by the West Australian Planning Commission and the Minister as well.
Thank you, Mr. Varelis. And thank you, Mr. Carucci, for your questions. Thank you. Mr. Jenke, representing the Friends of Wireless Hill, would you like to come forward and ask your questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our questions from Friends of Wireless Hill are mainly about the attachment which is in the agenda of this meeting for UP 2457, which is the reclassification of the land between the council car park just outside and Wireless Hill. So our first question relates to one of the figures in that report, which shows the structure plan of the activity centre, and it shows the land where we want reclassified as local open space. So we ask whether it's still going to be, whether the use of that land will be passive under the Melville City Activities Centre plan. The second question is that figure 8 shows an interface between public open space within that land area, and so we wonder whether that indicates two separate areas of different land use or activity levels within that section of land, which is now Class C, public open space, and we wonder what kind of land uses or activities are envisaged for that land as shown in figure 8. The figure 9 shows building heights in the vicinity of that land, and they vary from 3 to 8 to 6 stories. So we would like an independent report showing possible measures and regulations to require the design of any higher density residential and commercial buildings to be as benign as possible on their impact with the adjacent bushland and its wildlife. Okay, our fourth question relates to the access ways through that piece of land as shown on figure 10 for the activity centre. There are a couple of informal paths through there, so will the council rehabilitate those informal paths in the C class portion and ensure that any new formal path through the area, as indicated in that figure, is elevated above ground level to confine pedestrian movement through the area and to minimise disturbance to the vegetation adjacent to it. We're particularly concerned about the section on environmental significance, which shows the vegetation condition in the Wireless Hill Park. And in particular, the section of land is shown as degraded. We don't believe it is. So will the council commission an independent review of the processes and data which were used for that Wireless Hill Park Management Plan to conclude that the vegetation in this area is degraded, as shown in figure 13 of that report? And in particular, just verify the documentation of what species are present and any evidence for degradation relative to the major part of Wireless Hill. I would just point out that most of Wireless Hill was cleared completely to build the railway station, the radio station, but this section of land has never been cleared. In regard to my sixth question is about the bushfire considerations, and will the council require the design of new adjacent buildings to better withstand bushfire attack so that the fire risk reduction measures in the bush don't have to be as severe as it might otherwise. What I'm saying is maybe put the horse before the cart and design the buildings to suit the bushland, not construct the buildings and then worry about the fire risk. So, you know, the buildings can be modified. And lastly, in the section on community significance of this piece of land, as I said earlier, this piece of land has never been disturbed like the rest of the Wireless Hill Park, which was clear-felled for the construction of the radio station in 1911 and 1912, and it was kept that way for 60 years until the land was vested in the council. So will the City of Melville recognise the heritage value of this portion of land as an example of the bushland in the City of Melville before the arrival of Europeans and progress its reclassification as an A-class reserve? Also recognising the independence of plants, insects and soil fungi species, and adding the importance of the preservation of this area of land to the vision statement for the Wireless Hill site in general. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Jenke. Mr Varelis, would you like to provide a summary response to those very detailed or good questions, and more formal answers will be provided in the minutes, if that's okay with you, Mr Jenke? Yep. Thank you,
Through
Mr.
the
Varelis.
chair, thank you. I will defer to Manager Strategic Planning, Mr Gavin Ponton. He'll provide paraphrases of those responses. Thanks.
Yes, thank you for the questions. As mentioned, more comprehensive answers will be in the minutes. In relation to the first question, the use of the open space, the designation under the Melville City Centre Structure Plan does show that the land in question is open space. It doesn't imply that it would be active open space. In terms of question 2, the interface edge, this is something that we'll need to investigate further. It could be an anomaly in the plan, but certainly as part of the investigations, we'll look at that. The portion of C-class reserve isn't intended to be separated into 2 land use activities. We just need to clarify what the purpose of that interface line was. Question 3, in terms of building design, having regard to the conservation value of the bushland. Yes, if there was development of the land in close proximity to Wireless Hill, then that development would be required to have regard to impacts on the bushland and wildlife. This would be one of many matters considered through the review of the Melville City Centre Structure Plan. Question 4, in terms of pathways and rehabilitation. Measures to confine pedestrians to pathways in Wireless Hill, such as elevating paths, would be part of the consideration of any new linkages. Should existing paths become redundant with the construction of new paths, then it would be expected that investigation of rehabilitation of those paths would be looked at. Question 5. In relation to the current designation in the management plan as portions of the C-class reserve as being degraded. Yes, additional investigations are recommended to revisit the quality and conservation value of that land. Question 6, this issue of bushfire mitigation versus level of fuel load, I suppose. Again, that's something that is recommended be investigated in the further studies, and it is acknowledged that there is a relationship between the fuel load and the required building design under bushfire mitigation requirements, and yes, that would be explored. The last question is asking whether will council recognise the heritage value of this land. That basically is a matter for council to consider tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Jenke. Thank you, Mr Ponton. We have another question from Mr Fitzgibbon, and as Mr Fitzgibbon is not in attendance, his questions will not be read out, but in accordance with our meeting procedures, I advise Mr Fitzgibbon's question will be taken on notice and a response will be provided to him as soon as possible. Okay, so there are no further questions registered. Oh, sorry. So there's a form. Mr Drake, can we take one? Yeah. Come forward and ask your question. And then just provide a copy of your question. Yep, thank you. Question without notice. So as per our local law, you'll have a maximum of 2 minutes to ask your question and follow-up question, and please keep any preamble to the necessary information. If you wish to ask more than one question, and there are there's no others way you can ask a question. I remind everyone that you must complete a public question time form prior to asking your question. So, Mr. Drake, thank you. Can you turn your microphone on, please?
Would it please you to bring up a page 614, which is in the minutes, which is the figure 1 in attachment 1, please? Is that possible as part of preamble? Yeah, just on the screen for councillors.
Excuse me, Deputy Mayor. Can the gentleman please just identify himself? I didn't quite get that. Thank you.
Sorry,
His name's Mr. Drake.
Sorry, Martin Drake. I live in Burragoon. Thank you. Sorry.
And we don't have... Oh, we can't project the minutes, sorry.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Well, I'll do. So, as preamble, I refer to item UP 2457, which goes to the reclassification of the vegetation in Wireless Hill. I also refer to item C24128, which was the Melville City Centre bushfire management item, which was at the OMC in April 2024, so 8 months ago. And the question I asked specifically around that time, which referred to C24128, which was actually essentially questioning the area of land to the east of the boundary of Lot 50, which was, in my mind, looked like Civic Centre on the map, which you would have seen if councillors have received a copy of the map that Councillor Edinger asked for at the agenda meeting. And it's between the fenced land and effectively the border of the two lots, which are the subject of tonight's item. And I understand Mr. Ponton discussed this last week at the agenda meeting. So the question that I asked was that land part of the Civic Centre? And the answers that I received, 3 different attempts. One was it's Davey Street land, which a road reserve, which I challenged. Then I received an email and council minutes to confirm that land, it was said that land is not part of the Civic Centre site and is part of Yagan Wireless Hill Reserve. So given that response, I would have assumed that the item today would have sought to reclassify all the C-class reserve as A-class reserve, all the land that we would think of as Wireless Hill, i.e. enclosed in the boundary fence. So, as I understand it, the agenda meeting last week, and following an email from Mr. Ponton, I received an email that said the area immediately to the west of the Civic Centre driveway from Davey Street is part of the Civic Centre site, Lot 52, I should say. The vegetated area immediately to the west of the fence in this location is not part of lots 2647 or 2335 and not part of the land reserved for local open space. Now, why that's important is because we've just talked about Wireless Hill and the concept of Wireless Hill and the bushland. And why it's important to me is that if you were to pass the motion today, that section of land, which is about 18 metres in from the fence line, contains some very mature trees, lovely bush, and the cockatoos were in there just this week, and you've got natives on the ground. If you weren't to include that, that's not included in your motion tonight. So the whole rest of the park could become Class A reserve, and you've still got this big chunk of bushland, which is Civic Centre site and subject to Civic Centre rules. So there's an inconsistency which Mr. Ponton obviously identified and discussed last week at the agenda meeting. So my concern is that already I want that preserved, okay? No bones about it. I think it should be conserved. I think it's valuable. I think you heard last week it's high conservation value. Already I'm seeing blue paint marks on trees behind the fence line. What's that about?
Apologies, Mr. Drake. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sorry, I'll go to
Can
my
you ask your question, please?
Great, thank you, sorry. So, Mr. Ponton referred to an anomaly in the alignment of the lot boundaries and suggested the fence being the natural edge of the Wireless Hill Park area, which was the area I'd highlighted. So, Councillor Edinger asked, question 1, Councillor Edinger asked for the elected members to receive a location map clearly showing the boundary of Wireless Hill Park and the lot boundaries. Will that map be made available to the public? First question.
First question, yeah.
Second question, is the strip of high conservation value bushland considered to be within the High Street precinct of the Melville City Centre Activity Centre plan? Because it certainly looks like it now. I'm looking at the images in a different light, and therefore subject to a 6-storey building height limit. Okay, and that's in the figures. If it is, then will the Activity Centre review community engagement process seek to verify if this meets the community's expectations? Okay, question 3, hasn't the city already obtained relevant advice on bushfire hazard, mitigation measures and impacts with respect to the proposed Library and Cultural Centre project, or in relation to the item in April on bushfire risk management within the Civic Centre site, where recommendations were made? Okay. Question 4, would the city look to have the high conservation value strip of land incorporated into 1 or 2 of the subject lots that make up the current C-Class reserve, so that even if council ultimately decided not to reclass the Class C reserve, this strip of land would still become Class C reserve and protected with consistency? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr.
Mayor
Drake.
and
Can you
councillors.
provide a copy of your questions? Because
Sure.
I'll defer to Mr. Varellis, but I'm pretty sure that they need to be taken on notice.
Through the chair, some questions can be answered and some can be taken on notice. With regards to the first question in the plan, no problems in providing that plan to the public. If you send a request to me, we'll make sure that that plan is provided to you.
Sorry, to me or in the minutes?
I'll defer to governance for advice as to how that would be.
Ms. Newman?
The agenda briefing paper has it in there, but I'm not sure how that makes its way to the public or if it does.
Okay.
Ms. Newman?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, if it's not tabled at this meeting, it can't be included in the minutes, but we can certainly circulate it as another document. We'll find a way for that to be circulated.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Varellis.
Through the chair, the changes that you've spoken to can be considered through the Activity Centre Plan review process. With regards to bushfire, the city has undertaken some analysis in terms of the impact of bushfire planning on its future library and cultural centre. There's also been some work recently undertaken to understand that impact in regards to the site that was the subject of the item some months ago. I think it was April. That information I don't have at hand, so I will take the detail of that question on notice, but I can assure you that there is further work that's been done on that. With regards to assimilating it within one parcel that forms part of the broader Class A reserve of Wireless Hill, that will be taken on notice and considered as part of the broader Activity Centre Plan review process as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Varellis. Thank you, Mr. Drake. Could you provide your questions to the governance, please? Thank you. So there are no further questions, and I now declare no. Is there more? Just 1 minute, Mr. Corici, 1 minute. Yes, come forward, please. Keep your question brief or succinct, please. I'm not trying to squash your question, but just mindful of time.
Yeah. Okay, so I requested some clarification on conflict of interest policy. I received a reply, and today I've submitted some further comment because I believe that the conflict of interest policy has some relevant gaps for the LP6. There is a project that will last several years. So this is what is missing in my analysis. Okay, proactive disclosure of relationship. Your policy lacks a mandated preemptive disclosure mechanism for professional or personal relationship with stakeholders such as developers or property owners affected in the affected area. It was my point 1. Instead, it focuses on a case-by-case disclosure when specific situations arise. Prohibition of personal gain. While the policy prohibits financial conflict, it does not explicitly bar personnel or their immediate family members from benefiting financially from projects that are involved. This was my point 2. Restricted property transaction. The policy, your policy, requires personnel to disclose property dealings only if they, quote, intend to undertake a dealing in land within the city of Melville area, end quote. However,
Sorry,
there is...
Mr. Carucci, sorry to
No,
interrupt
no.
you. Is this a question?
Yeah. The question is, can you improve? Okay. It's coming. The question is coming.
Please.
Yeah. Just be patient because I understand you don't like it. Yeah, of course.
No, it's not a
you
matter of
don't
not
like it all.
liking it.
I
No,
know,
no, it's
but I'm
not.
here to challenge you, right?
No, I'm not
I
challenging
had 2
you.
minutes. The other person before me had 6 minutes.
Thank you. Please continue, sir.
Thank you. Okay. However, there is no restriction on property transaction. Okay, this one, on property transaction within affected areas during or after project involvement. It was my point 3. Third-party influence. Although your policy mentioned impartially and refraining from, quote, partisan policy activities, it does not require declaration of interaction with lobbyists or advocacy group, nor prohibit undue influence from third parties. Finished. Ongoing compliance and monitoring. This project will last several years, maybe a decade. The policy, your policy, does not include provision for ongoing compliance update or monitoring, where annual disclosure are required for officer only. Immediate reporting of changes and mechanism for random audits or investigation are absent. My point 5. So my request is, can you please seriously take, instead of bouncing back everything, okay, you have a reply for, just a rubber wall, bouncing everything. Can you please consider this concern? Thank you. Because I understand you don't like it, and I get nervous, of course, because, 2 minutes, because I'm challenging you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll get the CEO to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Catucci. So we will take your question on notice and provide a summary of the answer that we had provided to you earlier in the minutes. Some of the conflict of interest requirements are actually governed by regulations and Local Government Act legislation, including Elected Member Code of Conduct, for example, but we will take your concerns into consideration and do what we're able to within what we have the ability to influence. Thank you.
And thank everyone for their questions. I now close public question time at 19:08. And now I'm going to defer to the CEO for awards and presentations.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm pleased to advise the Council that the City of Melville's commitment to creating a diverse and inclusive workplace where all employees feel valued and supported has been highly commended at the 2024 Most Accessible Communities in WA Awards for its We Belong plan. Melville's first Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Belonging Plan, which is called We Belong, was launched last year, and the engagement we have seen from our people has been significant, and so significant, in fact, that the city has been branded as an inclusive employer for 2024-25 by the Diversity Council of Australia. We Belong is geared to increase diversity within our workforce and to create an inclusive environment where every team member is valued and respected. We strive to make a positive impact in our community and lead by example in embracing diversity and inclusion by doing the work from within. The high commendation is another affirmation that we are on the right track with our inclusion strategies and our organisational vision of being a vibrant, sustainable and inclusive Melville. I'd now like to thank all the staff involved in the We Belong plan and invite Miss Vanessa Sinclair, the lead strategic HR projects, and Mr. Rob de Nobrega to come up to the front of the stage and please receive this award. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ettinger has submitted a request for leave of absence for 4 weeks during December 24 and January 2025. Are there any further requests? No. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion to approve the request? Moved Councillor Barber, seconded Councillor Lim. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Sorry. So now we're going to the confirmation of minutes. Can I have a mover and seconder for the officer recommendation 9.1, ordinary meeting of council 19th of November 2024? Moved Councillor Ettinger, seconded Councillor Lee. Thank you. Any opposed? If not, I declare the motion carried unanimously. 9.2, Financial Management Audit Risk and Compliance Committee, 25th of November 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Spanbrook, thank you. Seconded Councillor Green. Any voice to the contrary? I declare that carried unanimously. 9.3, Governance Committee, 4th of December 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Moved Councillor Ettinger, seconded Councillor Hong. No opposition. I declare that motion carried unanimously. The 9.4, the Agenda Briefing Forum, 3rd of December 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder? That is moved Councillor Robbins, seconded Councillor Spanbrook. Any voice to the contrary? No, I declare that carried. Thank you. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Okay, the following items have been identified as having confidential attachments. C24226, the City of Melville Annual Financial Report 2023 to 2024. C24232, Quarterly Report, CEO Key Performance Indicators and Council Plan for the Future 2024 to 2034. C24222, RFT 242503, that's a lot of numbers, Men's Shed Refurbishment. C24223, P242501, Pre-Qualified Panel for the Supply of Refurbishment Services. Now, should elected members wish to discuss these confidential attachments, I will call for a motion to go behind closed doors. And additionally, item CD24/37, Community Safety Service Review, has been identified as confidential and will be held to the end of the meeting so we can move to go behind closed doors. There are no petitions for discussion this evening. And we now move to en bloc items for this evening. And the following items have been recommended to be carried en bloc. C24229, Council Meeting Schedule 2025. C24217, Common Seal December 2024. C24219, Investment Statements for October 2024. C24220, Schedule of Accounts Paid for October 2024. C2434, Advocacy Council Policy. C2436, Community Safety, CCTV and Technology Initiatives. UP3456, Scope and Resourcing Requirements to Progress Site Planning and Development Investigations for 67 to 69 Canning Beach Road and 2 Kintail Road, Applecross. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation?
Sorry.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Could I just flag my intention to oppose this being moved on block only because I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss the community safety policy. So if I'm happy to move it absent that one item, but I'd just flag that if it's going ahead with that item, I'd have to oppose moving them all on block.
So you're moving to remove the C2436 Community Safety, CCTV and Technology Initiatives. You want that moved out and we'll move the rest on block? Councillor Ettinger?
I'm happy with that, thank you.
Yep.
I would like, and I do apologise to governance, I should have let you know. I would like UP 24/56 removed from the en bloc item, please.
Scope and resourcing requirements to progress site planning. Okay, 1 minute. C2436 and CD. Any more items wish to be removed from the en bloc items? No? Okay, so we have a request to remove 2 items from these en bloc items. So therefore, can we remove the items CD 2436 and UP 2456, is that right, Councillor Ettinger? Yep, UP 2456. We'll remove those out and then we will move the rest of the items en bloc. Do you want me to read them all out again? No. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those items en bloc with the removal of those two items? Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded. Councillor Spanbrook, all those there's no voice to the contrary. I declare that carried. So now we will go to CD 2436, Community Safety, CCTV and Technology Initiatives. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thank you.
Is there a mover and a seconder for this?
Madam
Yeah, I think we'll need
Deputy
a-
Mayor,
Sorry,
sorry to interrupt. I'm just wondering, for the sake of people in the gallery, whether we should bring forward the men's shed item.
Yeah, could we? Okay, so thank you, Councillor Robbins. So as we've got, the next item we were going to do before we move those out, which we will come to them after these next two items, is, yeah, where are they? What page? What page? Oh. Okay, so we're going to continue on, and the two items we're bringing forward tonight are Mr Jenkins' item and the community men's shed item, and then we'll move to the en bloc items that have been removed, okay? Okay. We are now on item C24226, City of Melville Annual Financial Report 23-24, and this requires an absolute majority, and there are confidential attachments. Before tabling the officer recommendation, are there any elected members who wish to discuss the confidential attachment to this item? No? Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation, please? This is C24226, City of Melville Annual Financial Report. Oh, I've missed a page. Can I come back to that one next? Yeah, so we'll continue on with this one, and then we'll go back to the one that I was meant to do before this. Is that going to cause a drama? No, thank you. Bear with me, I'm the Deputy Mayor.
In fairness, given that I'm probably the cause of us getting confused, I'm happy to move C24226.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Can I have a seconder for C24226, City of Melville Annual Financial Report? Councillor Lim, thank you very much. Is there any voice to the contrary on this? No, therefore I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We will go back to M2441, City of Melville Community Annual Report 23-24, and this requires an absolute majority. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? Councillor Fitzgerald moves, seconded. I'll pick someone. Councillor Lim, thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary? If not, I declare that carried. Okay. So now, okay, we now move to reports from the CEO, and the first item I'll bring forward this evening for the convenience of those in the public gallery, and this is for Mr Jenkins, is UP 2457, proposed reclassification of lots 2674 and 2335, 4 to 6 Almondbury Road, Ardross from public open space to A-class reserve. It's a notice of motion, and also to other members in the gallery that are also here to see that, Mr Drake and other people. A written submission was received by Mr Jenkins, representing the Friends of Wireless Hill, in relation to this item, and was circulated to elected members, and a copy will be included in the minutes of this meeting. And I advise that an amendment to this item has been received from Councillor Ettinger, and an advice note has been distributed in relation to this amendment. Before we move to the amendment, I will need a mover and a seconder to get the officer recommendation on the table. Councillor Barber, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Green, thank you very much. So
I have a motion, an amendment.
We now move to councillor Edinger's amendment. Just got to turn the page. Prior to seeking a seconder, councillor, I understand you had a change to your amendment. Can you please speak to this change?
I can, thank you, that's the Carlton, Acting Deputy Mayor. So if you could cross off number 3 from your page, because I got completely confused and that lot doesn't actually exist. And then I've amended what was 4 is now point 3, and I've changed the wording to read that an interim report on progress of the process be reported to council by July 2025. And it's on the screen.
Councillor, would you like to introduce your motion? Do you want to speak to it? Oh, is there a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Edinger.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Mayor. We're looking at Wireless Hill on Google Maps. The viewer is provided with a large, slightly oddly shaped green area. This green area is made up of several lots. However, a member of the public looking at the green area would presume that the entire area is Wireless Hill, but this is not the case. On the southeastern corner of the green area, there are 3 separate lots. 4 to 6 Almondbury Road, which comprises lots numbers 2674 and 2335, and is zoned public open space, which we are currently considering as the substantive motion. And then there is part lot number 52, which is zoned Centre C1. Lot 52 encapsulates the city's administrative centre and has a strip that runs around the south-eastern corner of Wireless Hill Park. It is bounded by a fence on its southern and eastern edges. However, there is no distinct western or northern edges defined within the bushland. The area I'm seeking to incorporate into Wireless Hill is approximately less than 200 square metres. The scope of the January 2018 Wireless Park Strategic Management Plan 2017 to 2022, which was the only report I had to refer to till today, states on page 14 that this report is for the 37.54 hectares of bushland in Wireless Hill Park. That is reserve 33422 and lots 50, 100, 223, 14758, 14759 and 14760 and part lot 52. The 2024 report, which I was supplied with today, thank you for getting that to me, admin, also confirms in section 1.3 location and tenure the exact same scope. I'm a bit mystified by the lot numbers because on Intramaps the entire park is shown as a single lot, lot number 12884, pie parcel R29813, except for the areas that we're focusing on in the southeastern corner. The map provided by the city as attachment 2 to the agenda briefing forum business paper further information, which was distributed last Friday and which I would like to table as part of my report, clearly shows the extent of the Wireless Hill Management Plan boundary. It clearly shows that the part of lot 52, which I am recommending for integration into the park via this amendment, is encompassed by the management plan. Without including this additional lot, we may end up with an orphan lot with a lesser level of protection, but which falls under the auspices of the management plan, without the same level of protection as that provided by A-class reserve designation. The Wireless Hill Park Strategic Management Plan 2024 to 2028 states in section 2.3.2 fauna habitat that very large trees are important habitat sites for a number of resident and migratory birds and bats on site because many birds rely on tree hollows for nesting. Roost sites are critical habitats for bats, and the size of trees is one of the critical factors in determining the likelihood of hollow formation of trees. Figure 30 of the report, Distribution of Native Habitat Trees in 2022, details the locations of very large dead trees and live native trees with a trunk diameter at breast height greater than 50 centimetres. It can be clearly seen that they are generally confined to the southeast corner where there was no or minimal historic clearing. Figure 34 of the report shows the extent of the Friends of Wireless Hills no spray zone, which encompasses the 2 additional lots, It can be seen when walking through the Wireless Hill bush that the no spray and hand weeding regime provides the greatest opportunity for native ground covers and grasses to form a dense barrier against weeds. In November 2024, the report by Restore Advisory Services states that, and I quote, "At a high level, the rationale for designating the Class C portion as Class A reserve has merit on environmental grounds, particularly given its interrelationship with Wireless Hill Park, which is already designated Class A," end quote. During my research, I discovered a 21-page document contained in the Department of Biodiversity Conservation and Attractions Digital Library detailing the commencement of Wireless Hill as a Bush Forever site. It is Site 336. Contained within the scanned copy was a handwritten note from June 1997 which says boundaries should include bushland next to council chambers. I agree. Why can't we include the portion of Lot 52 that abuts 46 Almondbury Road into the substantive motion? It is for these reasons that I ask that you support my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edinger. Councillor Fitzgerald, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Nothing to add to that. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers against? Councillor Spanbrook? Any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Woodall?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I'll speak against. I supported the initial motion in relation to the other two lots, but in terms of Lot 52, I have concerns that we're going further than we need to here. The area we're talking about is about 15 metres wide and abuts the access road from the south of Davey Street to the Civic Centre. And my concern is that if we go down the path of rezoning this or considering rezoning it to Class A reserve, we may run into issues if we want to do something else with the land. For example, public open space, grassland, parks, playgrounds and so on. Currently, the whole of the Wireless Hill site is over 400,000 square metres. This little sliver of land is approximately 200 square metres. So I'm just not convinced that it's necessarily fundamental to the whole of the site. And I think if we're looking at the structure plan as a whole, we need to look at not only this particular site, but the other surrounding lots as well, and work out what is the best way to manage the zoning and land uses to achieve a good outcome. And it's likely that if there's further development in the future, there will be a need for grassed areas, for potentially room to kick a footy, play cricket, playgrounds and so on. And that may necessitate, in some cases, clearing of some bush. Even for bushfire control reasons. So I just think we're getting a little far ahead of ourselves here, and for that reason I wouldn't support this additional sliver of land being included. However, I am still supportive of the other two lots, which comprise the majority of the area, being considered as an option for converting to A-class reserve. And I'd also just note that this whole site that we're talking about is C-class reserve. The sliver is not, but it could easily be converted to C-class reserve, I understand it. But in any event, we've got to look at the whole centre, and there may have to be lot boundary changes and so on to actually make this workable, because I think otherwise reclassifying a sliver of land to A-class reserve, I'm not sure if you can do that if it's part of another lot. So I think they're all things to work through. So for that reason, I don't support the amendment at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Speaker 4? No? Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, only to note that I think while Councillor Woodall is correct that there are technicalities and the question that arises in the context of the broader review of the land use area, what significantly speaks against that is that if you look at this area and you asked someone, is that part of Wireless Hill, the overwhelming majority of people, without knowledge of the detail of the mapping, would say, yes, of course it is. I mean, it's one contiguous area that's currently bushland. I think people would be very surprised to learn that we are intending to treat these areas differently, because in their minds, this is all just Wireless Hill. And I think there is a real benefit to ensuring that public perception meets reality in these things, and I worry that we might get perceived as tricky, or we might get perceived as, you know, trying to be misleading. And I don't think this is councillor's intention, but I worry that this will be the perception if there are portions that we are attempting to carve out when someone looking at the area would understand that they were all just part of the same area.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. A speaker against? No more speakers. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I guess I would just like to reiterate the issues, the technicalities of redrawing the boundaries and that sort of thing. We've had quite a bit of discussion at EMES with the Planning Department, Mr Ponton in particular, and we've seen an officer advice note. And I think with numerous things to incorporate here in terms of the activity centre plan and these sorts of things, I think that we've heard that the boundary anomalies are these are things that do occur from time to time, and I think by supporting the amendment we'll be sort of adding complication that can be avoided. I do acknowledge that to some extent it requires an element of trust of us. I would say that I would certainly want to conserve that bushland still, but from a practicality point of view, I oppose the amendment and would prefer to run with the substantive motion.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Ettinger, would you like to wrap up?
Oh, thank you. I thank Councillor Fitzgerald for his words. Yes, people look at it and think it's part of, that land is part of Wireless Hill. I consider it to be good quality bushland. When you drive past, it looks healthy, it looks green. I think in terms of Councillor Green's observation about it bringing up more difficulty, I personally disagree. I believe that the city officers are professional enough and smart enough to be able to excise that bit from Lot 52 using whatever magic they have in their planning kit bag. And so I ask you to support my amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ettinger, and everyone that participated. So now we will go to a vote. So it's plus to support the amendment and minus to oppose it. Thank you. That's carried 8-3. Now we go back to, let me turn the page. We return to the substantive motion as amended. Is there anyone, have we got a mover and seconder for this one yet? Councillor Barber, Councillor Green. Is there anyone opposed to this substantive motion as amended? So do we want to speak more on this, or should we go to the vote? Councillor Barber, would you like to speak?
Well, maybe I'll just wrap up if that's all right, Madam.
No, you have to introduce it. It's a substantive motion as amended.
Oh, sorry, I'm just not sure what this.
So this is the substantive motion as
and I'm
amended.
speaking to it. I'm not wrapping up. I'm speaking.
Yeah,
to
you
the
moved the motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I just want to start by thanking the Friends of Wireless Hill, Mr Jenke and all his helpers for the wonderful work you do. I remember somebody came to me a couple of years ago and said, why we look after the rest of Wireless Hill? Why can't we look after, you know, this little bit of Wireless Hill, Councillor Barber? And I commend Councillor Ettinger for really taking up the baton and following through with this. They do a great job. And as Councillor Fitzgerald has already said, we think of that unique piece of land as Wireless Hill in its entirety. What is especially unique about these two lots are, as Mr Jenke mentioned earlier, that they have never been cleared. They are absolute virgin bushland, incredibly valuable. So upgrading it to an A-class reserve, similar to the rest of Wallace Hill, is incredibly important. I'm really glad that the city is recognising how important these parcels of land are, and I'm very happy to support this motion that the city will recognise the heritage value and the unique flora and fauna. We look forward to seeing the landscape planning as part of the Booragoon Activity Centre plan, and also hearing from our community via the community engagement. I hope you will support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Green, who seconded this motion? Councillor Green, did you want to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers against this motion? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I won't cover the points I've already raised. In speaking for the motion, Councillor Barber referred to the plan to rezone it Class A reserve. This is just calling for a report, and this is part of my concern, is that Council is, I think, acting as if this automatically means it will be reclassed as A-class reserve. I think that's a risk. We currently have C-class reserve. The main difference is that if it's A-class reserve, we're going to have to go to the state government, the department, I should say, every time whenever we want to make any alteration. There's going to be a lot of administrative work that the staff have to do, additional bureaucracy in managing the area, and I don't believe it actually results in any change. Wallace Hill, whether it's A-class reserve, and most of it is, but whether this other section is A-class reserve or C-class reserve, to the general public, it makes absolutely no difference. But the C-class reserve is easier from a management point of view for the city, I believe, because you don't have to get so many approvals and permissions from the relevant department. And as I've said before, I think if we're looking at the Melville City structure plan and the areas bordering the eastern part of Wallace Hill, which, as Councillor Fitzgerald said, people do think of as Wallace Hill, I do acknowledge that. It may be that you can't necessarily have all of that as full bushland. You may have to have some areas that the public can use for recreational activities like soccer, basketball, cricket, whatever it might be, footy. You might want playgrounds and benches and things like that in parts bordering the car park and the street. And I think that's something that you would need to go out to the community and ask them for their views, and also something you'd need to consider in light of what's proposed for other areas of the site. So for that reason, I don't support the whole area being converted to A-class reserve. I think it's going too far, and I think C-class reserve is sufficient for achieving what we need to, which is the protection of the area as public open space, and the exact mechanism by which that public open space or the exact form that it takes is something to be determined in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Is there any more speakers for, or shall... Yep, Councillor Edinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The Restore Advisory Services report states that, and I quote, "Neither the Land Administration Act 1997 nor its associated regulations contain specific procedural steps relating to the creation of a new Class A reserve," end quote. And that, I quote, "each request is processed based on the specific circumstances," end quote. The process as it stands is that the city will complete a Crown Land Inquiry form. I actually have one handy, I can give it to you, which is 6 pages long, and they need to provide, and I quote, "any other supporting documentation such as photographs, other comments or consultations," end quote. The city has the following to hand right now: the Wallace Hill Park Strategic Management Plan 2024 to 28, and the Restore Advisory Services Report Prospective Reclassification of Crown Reserve 33422 to Class A Reserve Preliminary Assessment. The city can undertake stakeholder consultation and community consultation via the Melville Talks Forum. The form appears to be fairly straightforward, using the KISS principle, asking which item best describes your request. And I would think the answer might be amalgamation, It then asks for the inquiry to be described in more detail, such as, and I put it this forward, the Council of the City of Melville moved a motion requesting 4 to 6 Almonbury Road and Part Lot 52 to be reclassified to Class A reserves and amalgamated into Wireless Hill Park. Restore Advisory Services recommends engaging with utilities. However, page 12 in the report states that a dial before you dig search indicates that there are no electricity, water, sewer, gas, telecommunications or stormwater assets within the Class C portion. So it could be concluded that that piece of consultation has been completed. Other proposed activities, such as the Melville Activity Centre Plan or Bushfire Hazard Assessment, will, in my opinion, not change the eventual outcome should the motion be approved. They will just delay things. The preparation of a landscape concept can occur regardless of whether the land is Class A or Class C. Although, according to Councillor Woodall, it's going to cause the city to undertake even more work than they already do. The city is saying additional consultants would need to be engaged. Hasn't Restore Advisory Services provided the city with a report that has enough information to make an informed decision? Unnecessarily engaging consultants simply results in ratepayers' funds being unnecessarily spent. The Wireless Hill Reserve Management Plan 2024 to 28 and the Restore Advisory Services both state that the land being considered is degraded. The cover of the consultant's report, disappointingly, shows a particularly depressing aspect of the bushland under consideration. It's a shame because there are far more picturesque areas that could have been photographed for use on the report cover. There is no explanation of what constitutes degraded or where they get that term from. Driving here this evening, I had a close look at the land in question, and I have to say that the bush I could see looks lush and clear and very, very attractive. It does not look degraded. Confusingly, the Restore Advisory Services report also advises in the executive summary and then again in the conclusion, using the exact same wording, that, and I quote, at a high level, the rationale for designating the Class C portion as Class A reserve has merit on environmental grounds, particularly given its interrelationship with Wireless Hill Park, which is already designated Class A. This is why I asked you to support the motion, to protect our precious rare bushland through reclassification of 4 to 6 Almonbury Road and Part Lot 52 to Class A status. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ettinger. Is there any more speakers against? If not, we'll go back to Councillor Barber to wrap up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do thank Councillor Woodall for his thoughts, and he is correct in the point where we're not deciding that this is going to be an A-class reserve yet. This is all just part of the report. And so I think let's just let the city officers get back to what they are doing and investigate, plan, and we look forward to hearing their response as to whether this is feasible. So I ask you to support this motion. Thank you.
Can I just
Thank you,
clarify?
Councillor Barber. That's finished.
not a
The
report?
debate's finished. Thank you. We'll go straight to the vote.
Oh, I just have a question for
Sorry,
Councillor
it's
Barber
finished. Sorry.
But it's not a report for the officers, it's for them to actually submit.
Can we go straight to the vote, please, Governance? Green to support the substantive motion as amended and red to not support it. I declare that carried 9 to 2. Thank you. And so for the purposes of the meeting, and because we have such a large contingent of gentlemen from the community, and maybe ladies, from the community men's shed here in the gallery, we'll go straight to item C24222, RFT 242503, men's shed refurbishment. There is a confidential attachment to this, and I advise that Councillor Ettinger has declared a financial interest in this item and the next, and I would like to invite Councillor Ettinger to leave the meeting. Thank you. And before tabling the officer recommendation, are there any elected members who wish to discuss the confidential attachment attached to this item? No? That's great. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Councillor Spanbrook moved, seconder. Councillor Woodall, thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary for this item? If not, I declare it carried. Thank you. And so now, since we've got Councillor Ettinger, congratulations, Menshed, out of the room, and we will go to the next item, C24223P 242501, pre-qualified panel for the supply of refurbishment services. And before tabling the officer recommendation, there is a confidential attachment attached to this item. Does anyone wish to discuss the attachment? Fabulous. No. So can I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Councillor Lim, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Green. Is there any voice to the contrary for this item? If not, I declare that carried. Thank you. And Councillor Ettinger, you can come back in the room now. And we return back to where the en-bloc items were pulled out. No? Okay. Is Councillor Ettinger back in? Oh, no, it's okay. So we are going to item C24232, Quarterly Report, CEO Performance Indicators and Council Plan for the Future, 2024 to 2034. And before tabling the officer recommendation, I remind elected members that Ms G Bowman is declaring an impartiality interest under the Code of Conduct in relation to this item. Are there any elected members who wish to discuss the confidential attachment to this item? No? Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation, please? That is moved, Councillor Ettinger, seconded, Councillor Lim, thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary on this? If not, I declare that carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're doing the fencing, C24211, proposed fencing local law 2024, and this requires an absolute majority. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation, please? Moved, Councillor Hung, seconded, Councillor Lim. Councillor Hung, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I urge councillors to support the officer's recommendations on this item tonight. The current fencing bylaws, established in 1983 and last amended in 2011, are outdated and no longer reflect the needs of modern residential and commercial properties. A comprehensive repeal and replacement are urgently required to update terminology, adjust minimum height requirements, introduce modern fencing materials, remove obsolete clause, and add new clause to provide clearer rules on compliance, offences, penalties, and enforcement. Without this update, the city faces the risk of inconsistent and inadequate decision-making, which could undermine our ability to maintain community standards effectively. Furthermore, proactive action is essential to ensure alignment with the Local Government Amendment Bill 2024 before it takes effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hung. Councillor Lim, would you like to speak or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary for this item? If not, I declare that carried. Thank you. Well done, Councillor Hung. We are on to C24221, Statements of financial activity for October 2024. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation? And this does require an absolute majority. That is moved Councillor Lim, seconded Councillor Lee. Thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary? If not, I declare that carried. Done that one. Now we are C24-230, new committee structure, nominations and meeting schedule. This requires an absolute majority. Now, nominations to the committees were received throughout this week and were available on the elected members portal. The final nominations can be seen on the screen, and elected members have a hard copy in front of them. Are there any further nominations or changes? If not, can I have a mover and a Councillor Robbins?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to take this opportunity to encourage anyone who's not a deputy for a committee to put their hand up to be one, just because I know for a couple of the committees we don't have many deputies, and so I know recently there was a meeting, a committee meeting that struggled to get a quorum. I think in the end they did, but yeah, just I think there's a few councillors there who've signed up to be on a committee but not a deputy, so I encourage those councillors to put their hand up to be a deputy as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Is there anyone who is not a deputy yet want to be a deputy? Wish to nominate?
Madam Mayor, I put my form in tonight and I've nominated to be a deputy on the Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Any further nominations? Where's Councillor Spambrooke? Yep. Look,
Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I believe Councillor Ross is not a deputy and obviously is not here, but I wonder whether he might be willing in absentia to be a deputy.
Look, I think for the purpose of expediting this item, we can look at it in the new year. We can add deputies in the new year. Councillor Ross can have that option because he's not here and he's on leave of absence, as with Madam Mayor, but she's nominated for, yeah. So, Councillor Spambrooke, we just asked the question if anyone would like to change their nomination or re-nominate for as deputy for anything, noting that you are already nominated for a member and a deputy. Is there no changes from you? No?
No, I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can I have a mover and a seconder then for this item? Councillor Robbins, moving.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor Hong, seconded. Thank you.
As well. Can I just ask how the deputies are going to work? I know we discussed it previously, but I don't know if there's been any clarity. Like, is the person who's listed as a deputy next to the member, are they a deputy for that member, or are we just doing it like everyone's just a deputy and it's sort of like first in, best dressed?
Ms Newman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, I would suggest that each of the committees discuss their deputy arrangements as part of their first order of business for their first meeting and come up with something that all of them agree to. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a mover, Councillor Robbins, seconded Councillor Hong. Is there any voice to the contrary? No? I declare that carried. Thank you. Very good. Tick, tick. Now on to CD 2433, Council Policy, Child Safety and Wellbeing. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Fitzgerald, thank you. Councillor Lim, seconder. Anyone opposed to this item? If not, I declare that carried. Thank you. Item CD 2435, Aurora and Sabina Parking. This requires an absolute majority. Excuse me.
34 is the advocacy policy.
No, that's the en bloc. It's an en bloc item. I advise that the report on this matter refers to the Parking Local Law 2016. This should be the City of Melville Parking Local Law 2023. Oops. And will be amended in the minutes of this meeting. The clause references are correct. Now, can I have a mover and a seconder for this? Councillor Fitzgerald. Seconder for this item? Councillor Lee, thank you. Is there any voice to the contrary? If not, I declare that carried. Okay. Now we'll go back to the on-block items that were removed, and they are CD 2436. I'll give you a moment to find them in your papers. And governance will put that up on the screen. Where is it? Was I right? Okay, so we are first dealing with CD 2436, Community Safety, CCTV and Technology Initiatives. Is there a mover and a seconder for this item? Councillor Robbins, seconder? Councillor Woodall, thank you. Now, before we go forward, now, Councillor Fitzgerald, did you just want to debate this one, or have you got...
No, I've no
Is there a
amendments.
reason for you?
I will be putting the case that we should probably not pass this, but I'm happy to do that in the context of standard debate.
Yep. Okay, Councillor Robbins, would you like to speak to this item?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'll keep my comments brief and perhaps say a bit more once I hear from Councillor Fitzgerald. But generally, I'm supportive of this plan. There's a lot of different components to it, and we've been briefed extensively and had the opportunity for engagement at our elected members' sessions, which I've really appreciated. Part of this is the CCTV rebate program, which I brought as a proposal to Council I think earlier in the year, and there's been a couple of options provided by officers there, and I'm happy to go with the option that's been recommended, which would put City of Melville at the forefront in this space, in this sort of CCTV live alert space, which I think is really exciting. I note that there probably will be some concerns in the community, and I've definitely heard those concerns from people who have attended meetings previously and flagged those concerns. But I do note that that it's a sort of staged process, and there is consultation proposed that it will come back to council for us to look at consultation and to further consider whether we proceed. So based on that, I would ask other councillors to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Who did you second it, Councillor Woodall?
I'll reserve my right.
Thank you. Any voice to the contrary? Councillor Fitzgerald?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and apologies to councillors that this is relatively late in the piece, and I acknowledge, as Councillor Robbins pointed out, that this has been raised at various EMISs. Without wanting to disclose how the sausage is made to those in the public gallery, my PDF copy of the full confidential minutes runs to 795 pages, and I must confess that this had been lower on my priority list for the reasons that Councillor Robbins identifies. That is, that this is a question of going out for consultation rather than the implementation of a policy. It wasn't until relatively late in the piece, when I'd actually finally gotten through all of that material, that I realised a couple of things that perhaps we might want to deal with before we go out to consultation. So I think probably the easiest way to do this is for me to draw elected members' attention to two issues that arise within the officer's recommendation, and then to make one final point about the broader question of community trust. The first is that the stated goal of this policy is to reduce crime. And of course, that is a laudable goal, and if we can do that, we absolutely should. But what is notable is that the rationales given for adoption of the CCTV policy point to broad questions of visual deterrence of crime, but no actual evidence or research that CCTV reduces crime. And this is consistent broadly with the research in criminology, which suggests that there is a role for CCTV to play, particularly in areas that are industrial areas. There is strong evidence that they reduce crime there. There is very limited evidence that they reduce crime in other places. I'm going to quote from, I think it's page 90 on my PDF documents, but it's in the officer's report. It talks about a gap between the City of Melville's CCTV and other local governments. And it says this gap underscores the need for the City of Melville to adopt more advanced and widespread technology rollout to address community concerns about safety. Now, the reason I think that's notable is that if you go to the WA Police statistics pages and you compare rates of crime in our suburbs with those surrounding suburbs, you will find that we enjoy far lower rates of crime than the comparable suburbs that have been identified. This is a natural experiment which suggests that rather than needing to adopt more widespread technology to make up this gap, that the absence of this technology is not causing an increase in crime in those areas. The second part, and I think probably the thing, that by itself may not have caused me to object to this, but the bit that really, I think, excited me about this is further on, again, page 90, I believe. It says, by integrating AI, artificial intelligence, into the CCTV network, the city can implement features like real-time loitering detection and alerts for suspicious activity. The integration of AI will not require a specific budget as, and this is very important, many quality camera manufacturers now incorporate AI features into their commercial-grade cameras, full stop. Now, what that means is that we will not be running our own vision detection systems over and having control of it. We will effectively be outsourcing to whomever the camera supplier is control of AI processes. Functionally, this will mean that almost certainly an American technology company who supplies us with these cameras will be controlling the AI that is run over them. This gives rise to two significant difficulties. The first is, and we sometimes say in law school, you need to be cautious about asking questions you don't want the answer to. Real-time loitering detection makes a problem of every time someone is hanging around in a park at 3 o'clock in the morning. That happens a lot across the city, and currently we are completely unaware of it. And so far as people are keeping to themselves and not disturbing their neighbours, perhaps that's something that we don't need to know about. If this now becomes a question for our getting an alert and sending out every time we've got, teenagers in a park at 3 in the morning, this is interactions with our community that are not particularly favourable, that, perhaps we don't need to be having. But secondly, and more concerningly, I apologise, I'm about to run out of time, if I could have a brief extension.
Move for an extension. Councillor Ettinger, Councillor Barber. All those in favour? Any voice to the contrary? Councillor Robbins, thank you. Consistent?
Consistently, American companies that have collected data and run AI analysis on visual data have been extremely leaky and have used that data in ways that people did not anticipate. I have no doubt that there will be absolute compliance from the city's end with the highest standards, both of legal and ethical obligations with regard to the way that we use our data. The problem we've got is that what we are proposing when we go out to the community is that effectively this will be free for us because we will get a private company to do it. And experience has taught again and again that that comes with very significant challenges that we will not control. I would suggest that if we are going to go out for consultation on this, it would be better if we first had a clearer idea of what we were consulting on and what our internal policies should be that we are comfortable with, and then we can go out and say, having established these policies, we are now going out to consultation on particular implementation. The final point I want to make is one about community trust. Elected members might have noticed one of the gentlemen asking a question tonight was wearing a T-shirt bearing a large red V and the word INGSOC, I-N-G-S-O-C. For those who missed this reference, it's a reference to George Orwell's 1984. This is a real concern in the community. And there is a group of people for whom suggesting that we have a citywide AI-integrated CCTV network is something that they are very concerned about. We would do well, I think, to not write those concerns off as immediately unreasonable. I think we need to think about why is it that people have this trust gap and what do we need in place to address that trust gap before we can dive headlong into issues like this. So my recommendation is that we not pass this report at this stage. We come back to it once we have in place a comprehensive privacy policy and a clearer idea of what our appetite and risk is in relation to the implementation of some of these more challenging parts of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Speaker 4, Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I'm happy to speak in favour of the motion, although I may not have quite the level of detail that Councillor Fitzgerald had speaking against it. I think this is something that's been looked at for quite a while. I've been a strong advocate of wanting additional CCTV in public spaces around the city for a number of years. Noting that we already have CCTV, that's the reality. What we're talking about here is additional locations at city facilities, public open spaces and whatnot for CCTV with the aim of crime prevention, deterrence and making the community feel safer. I note that there were concerns raised by Councillor Fitzgerald about the actual effectiveness of CCTV, and I think that's a matter which could be debated well into the night. There are arguments for and against, and I'm sure lots of different research on that. One thing I would say that I think is quite clear is that CCTV does assist the police in catching perpetrators. Whether it prevents crime in the first place is another question, but I think there are definitely benefits to having CCTV. In terms of the rebate program, look, that's probably an area where I personally have some questions or concerns over whether it's something the ratepayers as a whole should be funding or whether that's really a decision for individual residents as to how they choose to protect and safeguard their own properties, but I'm certainly supportive of it in public open spaces. The other point I would make around the AI and the risk of that, I think it's very clear that there needs to be safeguards in place, and I have no doubt that the city staff in this area would ensure that we operate our CCTV in a way that is consistent with privacy requirements, that is consistent with maintaining those safeguards. And there are many examples around the world where CCTV is used effectively and appropriately as a crime prevention tool and as a means to catch criminals for crimes that have been committed. And, you know, a great example is Singapore. For anyone who's been to Singapore, they have a massive CCTV network. It's very effective. Anyone can be tracked almost anywhere across the city, and it makes committing crime there very difficult. Criminals get caught very quickly, and I think that's a good thing. So I'm overall supportive of this. I do take on board some of the concerns that Councillor Fitzgerald raised, which I think can be addressed, but I would suggest that voting against the item as a whole is not going to achieve that. I think if council had those concerns and wanted them explored further before putting this into place, I would suggest a deferral would be more appropriate than simply voting down the whole item, because voting down the whole item will suggest that we don't want to do anything regarding CCTV, which I think could also send the wrong message to the community, because they may be saying, well, why doesn't the city care about reducing crime, about our safety and whatnot. So I think we've got to be very careful about how we approach this, but I'm overall comfortable with what's been proposed, but I would suggest that if there are concerns around the table, then perhaps a deferral should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Is there a speaker against? Councillor Spanbrook.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In line with Councillor Fitzgerald, that there is quite a lot in what he had to say that I do concur. And in saying that, is it too late to move a deferral, please? Because I do think that...
No, you can move a procedural motion. Is that what you want to do?
Yes.
Move a deferral? To what date?
Beg your pardon?
What date would you like to move this item to?
Well,
It's got to be to an EMES or an
conversation with Miss Pickering. Perhaps we have council elections in October.
Sorry, Councillor Spambrook, we need a date that
Yes.
it comes back to council.
Okay. Yeah. March 2025.
March 25?
But can this please needs to go to an EMIS prior?
So this is a procedural motion. Can we put that in there as well?
So can it?
We'll note that for it to come back to an EMES
Yes,
prior
please.
to the March meeting.
Yes.
Yep.
If that's not enough time, then April's fine.
So we'll go with March or April. Which one? Ms Pickering, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. It's really dependent on how early we can get into an EMIS. I haven't seen the calendar for next year, but yeah, that would really be the only thing that would stop us from an administrative point of view. Thank you.
Okay, April?
Yes.
Councillor Spambrook?
That is fine.
So
yes.
we've got a procedural motion on the table from Councillor Spambrook. Is there a seconder? Councillor Edinger? So we'll go straight to the vote.
Do I give a reason for that or I don't?
I think you've just given it, haven't you? You wanted it to be
Okay,
deferred to
we'll
an
go-
EMES
All right.
and
Yeah,
be
yeah,
deferred
sorry.
to
No,
April?
I just think there's too many components in it.
let's just vote on it, shall
All right,
we?
thank you.
So green is for the deferral and red is against. So that is carried deferral, 6 votes to 5. So we will move to page 25. E2456, Moro Muse Town Square Public Open Space Budget Allocation to progress the project for 2024 to 25. And this requires an absolute majority. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Lim, seconded Councillor Lee. Is there any voice to the contrary on this one? Any voice to the contrary? Oh yeah, Councillor Robbins. Okay, Councillor Lim, would you like to open the motion?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So this budget amendment is funded through reserves, and it includes, the demolition of the 31 Moro Muse and the temporary office fit out due to, the HVAC upgrade that's currently happening in Civic Centre. So it sort of has many benefits to this budget amendment. So this effectively ensures that the project stays on track. That is sort of like a phase consultation process from pretty much now all the way through to March 2026. It just ensures that community inputs are being considered to shape the final concept, and also keeping the residents informed and engaged as well. So this project, it's pretty much demonstrating to the residents of the city that we're committing to delivering a functional, inclusive space that aligns with the community needs and the environment surrounding it. So there's definitely a demand for this space. So there's many sort of extensive activities like pop-ups, drop-in zones, and it really highlights the residents' desire to actually have this space to build connections and to have recreation. So I would urge my fellow councillors to approve this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Councillor Lee, would you like to speak now and reserve your right?
Thank you. Deputy Mayor. I'm concording with Councillor Lim, and this has been a long, ongoing project that the residents have demanded. So I hear countless feedback that this have to continue. And the thing that we miss all along is we thought that if we sort of do away with this and we can save the council's money. But what the developers are hoping for is that they can continue their projects and all the high rise, but on condition that they get more open space. But if you keep arguing all the time about something else, then it's going to be another backlash. So I fully concord with Councillor Lim.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Now, Councillor Green, Councillor Robbins, did you want to, you said that you were opposed to this. Did you want to speak first? Because she said it.
Deputy Mayor, I just had a question.
Oh, sorry,
Is it
question? Yep.
Yeah, I think perhaps to the CEO, but through you. Yeah, I was just interested in, so we have a budget amendment of 315,000. I was just interested in how much of that is being spent on the fit out of the 5052 Kishorn temporary office.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Mr McCarthy, could you answer that question, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor Green. So in the body of the report, it's broken down the three sort of key budget items into the consultation and design process for the town square, also looking at the demolition of the building and making good of the site, and also the temporary office. So within the temporary office, 30,000 has been allocated for that, a small amount for furniture, and the majority of that related to IT and communication related to setting up Wi-Fi, router, licensing, etc. for the equipment needed for the city to be able to run sort of temporary hot desks out of that area.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr McCarthy. Councillor Robbins, would you like to speak now against?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'll keep it brief. All along, it's been my position with regards to these pieces of land that we should find some sort of compromise for the site and turn some of it into public open space, but perhaps use a portion of the site to generate an income for the city. And I think that, as I alluded to in my question last week at the ABF, there's a brilliant opportunity for the city to do something different with even, just a small portion of the site, and then I think this could pay for itself, as opposed to costing the city millions of dollars over a few years. So for those reasons, I'm opposed to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. Is there any more speakers for Councillor Barber?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. It's probably just a comment to Councillor Robbins and her concern about creating, and we might be getting off track, but I've just was looking at some figures, and the apartment buildings around this particular piece of land in the last 6 years have generated $1.3 million in rates. And I think if there's ever a reason to give these people some open space, it's because they're paying so many rates. In the last 3 years, 3 properties alone gave the city $500,000. So I think I agree with the motion. I think it's a really valuable piece of land. I personally don't think that we need to create a money-raising revenue on there. As I've just shown, we've got $1.3 million in rates. But therefore, we need a thorough investigation. And so having the budget to do this really well is very important. So I certainly agree with the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. I'll take one more speaker against. If there's no more, Councillor Woodall.
Thank you. I think, as Councillor Robbins has alluded to, it would be reasonable for a small portion of this site to be developed to fund the public open space on the remainder of the site. I don't think the argument that surrounding properties pay a lot in rates is justification. That's similar to other arguments around, Garden City will pay for the cultural centre. Well, it won't. It's coming into general rates. It's still a cost on top of what ratepayers generally have to be provided, what the city provides in terms of its service offerings and facilities. And the fact is that those developers of those towers in that area, Canning Bridge, developed towers and sold the apartments knowing that there was none of this public open space. The apartment owners bought into those developments knowing that there was not this public open space. The developers have chosen not to provide sufficient public open space on those sites, and now the city and the ratepayers at large are being expected to bear the cost effectively of providing that public open space for apartment owners who are basically getting a free ride, I would say, with public open space being provided courtesy of ratepayers at large. So I just don't buy that argument at all. And I think this is a significant amount of money in addition to the Esplanade, and in my view, it's excessive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Councillor Lim, did you like to wrap up?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so without going through what I've already mentioned, so it is important that we follow through with this because we're actually working in a fairly tight time frame because we're expecting to pretty much wrap up the entire community engaged part by May next year. So, and before that, there's already going to be sort of a draft presentation, I think March next year. So soon after we come back from Christmas, we will be presented with a plan and we'll be presented to give feedback and act on that plan as well. So I would suggest that we approve this to get as much community feedback as we can so that we can make an informed decision to start constructing in March 2026. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. We'll go to the vote. It's green to support the motion and a red to not support it, to oppose it. Far out, this has all gone all... Oh, shit. That's carried 8-3, and that was an absolute majority. Now, for the next item, I will... Where are we? What page are we on? 26. Councillor Ettinger and I are declaring a financial interest in this next matter and requesting the permission of Council under Section 5.68 of the Act to stay and discuss the matter. So I'll ask Councillor Barber to assume the chair, and Councillor Ettinger and myself will leave the chamber.
Can I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? No, you won't have it. Sorry. The motion is that the council note the financial interest declared by Deputy Mayor Wheatland and Councillor Ettinger and approve their request to stay and discuss the item E2457, Resource Recovery Group Office Accommodation Project, lending facility in accordance with Section 5.68 of the Local Government Act. Is anybody opposed? Oh, sorry, we need a mover first. Councillor Fitzgerald, can I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Green. Is anybody opposed to the motion? If not, I declare it carried. Just wait for the Manager of Governance to bring Deputy Mayor and Councillor Ettinger back into the chamber.
Sorry, I know.
So the officer recommendation is on the screen. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder for the officer recommendation. Councillor Fitzgerald is moving. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Woodall, seconding the motion. Is there any voice to the contrary? Councillor Spanbrook.
Madam Presiding Member, I was trying to think what to call you. Sorry about that. Can I just ask Director McCarthy a question, please?
Certainly.
With regard to the $1.6 million loan, and I'm sorry to do this, I should have actually done it some time ago, but I just forgot for whatever reason. Does the director have a value of 9 Elders Place in Burragoon, like a current value of that property? Is that something should be
Mr
taken on
McCarthy, could you
notice?
respond to the question, please?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and also for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. So there's a balance there of what the current loan is, and it was a $2 million loan facility when it was first established. I think the last valuation would have been a few years ago when they went through an amended business plan, when I think it was the City of Coburn withdrew. So I haven't got a current valuation at the moment, but it would something that would have to go through in subsequent stages as we move through the transition process.
May I have a follow-up question, please?
Yes, Councillor.
With 9 Elders Place, how is it utilised with this actual building? Because I know that things have changed somewhat, and exactly what's its purpose now? I'll put it that way. Thank you.
Mr McCarthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. So the building is a 2-storey building. It currently houses about, I think, around 10 staff in that area. It's probably got the capacity to house probably 30 or more staff. It's also got a large 2-storey storage space at the back, which is quite significant, and it's temperature controlled, as well as a garage on the property as well. So it's in a really good location close to the city. I would say that the value of it would be in excess of what the initial loan facility was, but I can't comment much further than that.
Apologies there, Presiding Member. Just one more question.
Yes, Councillor.
Is it necessary to retain the building, Director McCarthy? Thank you.
Mr McCarthy.
So thank you, Madam Chair, and also for your question, Councillor Spanbrook. It is necessary to retain the building at the moment. We're going through a process of transition from the RRRC site and looking to progress an offer to the market to continue the operations of that site. Whether that process is successful or otherwise, there is still a need for somewhere to house the RRG as an organisation so that they can manage that transition process.
Thank you, Mr McCarthy. Councillor, Deputy Mayor, you've got a statement or question?
I'd just like to comment on that. So the building at 9 Elders Place is owned by RRG, of which the City of Fremantle and the City of Melville are member councils, and until the wind-up process has gone through, there is no way that either member council can dispose of that property. It's part of the transition to the new collective, so.
Are there any further questions? Is there anybody opposed to this motion? Councillor Fitzgerald?
Not opposed. I just wanted to be noted, given that the wording of the motion is that the City of Melville gives its consent for the town of East Fremantle to be released, it would be remiss of me in particular not to let this pass without noting that I think personally it is very regrettable that the town of East Fremantle has made this decision and has put us in this position. I think the RRG was an excellent way of dealing with this shared issue of waste, and it is unfortunate that we are now in a position where, notwithstanding we are consenting to their release, that we need not have been in this position had the town of East Fremantle made different choices.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to add further to that it's not just the trigger of the town of East Fremantle withdrawing from the RRG. It actually went back probably when, Mick could probably comment on this, when Coburn first withdrew, that the operating model of a regional council potentially could have been looked at then, because across the metropolitan area, the regional councils that have been set up for waste precincts are failing. So we're at a critical point in our waste journey where we need a new model, and it's why this collective model that we are looking to move to potentially could, you know, play a lead role in waste collectors of the future.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there any other questions or comments? I too concur with Councillor Fitzgerald. I think City of Melville, with this regional model, have handled waste really well, and it's a shame it hasn't worked out. If there are no voices to the contrary, I'm going to declare this motion carried. Thank you.
And look, I just want to add one more thing to that, to the previous item, is that the organisation, this SMRC, now known as RRG, has actually gone above and beyond and delivered excellent recovery results for the City of Melville, for the City of Fremantle and the other councils that have been involved in this project. And you know, RRG and the staff within it need to be commended on their excellent resource and recovery rates, because I think it's 97% currently, and it's very good, and it's a very, you know, interesting time. So thanks, just want to make that comment. So now we are going to pay to the UP 2454. Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review. So this is a big one, and we have a little bit to unpack from before. So please bear with me and listen to my direction. This is the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan Review. Further information request, Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage. I note that Councillor Lee has declared a proximity interest in this item, and I invite Councillor Lee to leave the meeting. This item was deferred from the 19th of November 2024, ordinary meeting of Council, and at the time of the deferral, the officer recommendation had lapsed for want of a seconder. The alternative motion before you had been moved by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Lim, and Councillor Ross had begun introducing the motion. Additionally, there are 2 advice notes and 2 amendments proposed for this item. This alternative motion is on the table, and I will ask Councillor Ettinger to move her amendment first. Councillor, do you wish to proceed?
I do. Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you.
If so, can I have a seconder for the amendment, please? Councillor Lim, thank you.
I am moving this motion solely so that the wording will be as Councillor Ross originally intended, and there was a drafting error, I understand, which wasn't picked up. So I'm not going to speak to it other than that, because Councillor Ross spoke to it at the previous meeting, and so I will leave it there. Thank you.
Is there anyone opposed to this?
Deputy
Councillor
Mayor,
Stanbrook?
does this have any impact on the next amendment? Does this, with this amendment by Councillor Ettinger, will it have any impact on the next amendment by Councillor Barber? Okay,
No,
thank you.
No, it won't. So I declare that this has been, Councillor Robbins?
Sorry to interrupt process, but I'm just curious, like the substantive motion was moved by Councillor Ross.
No, the substantive motion.
Oh, sorry, the original.
Lapsed for want of a seconder.
Oh, sorry, the
alternative motion had been moved by Councillor Ross.
Yes, apologies, was moved by Councillor Ross, but he's not here. So how can we be discussing a motion that's moved by someone who's not at the meeting? Like, does it not need a new mover?
Councillor Lim offered to take up
Ms Newman?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, so the motion is on the table, it is live. The deferral happened after the motion has been moved and seconded and the introduction had begun. So it's still a motion that's on the table. We do need to deal with it regardless of the fact that the mover is no longer here. At the meeting in November, we did identify, before we moved on to the next item, that there had been an error and we would provide advice on how to correct that.
So the minutes of this meeting will reflect that Councillor Ross moved the motion when he wasn't here.
So Councillor Ross moved this alternative motion at the November council meeting and he started to speak to the motion when it was deferred. So technically, he's already moved the motion and is that right? Ms Newman?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, so the minutes will reflect that Councillor Ross moved the motion at the 19th of November Ordinary Council meeting and that it was deferred. It will reflect also that he had, that Councillor Lim had seconded it and that he had begun introducing the motion when it was deferred. And so we picked that debate up from that point in time.
1 minute. Is everyone clear on that? Hang on 1 second. Councillor Green, you go first. Let's just not get confused here.
Can I just see if I have this right? So, the motion was moved.
No, the alternative motion was moved.
Now the alternative motion was moved. Councillor Ettinger's amendment. If we vote for that amendment, then that becomes the substantive motion, and then there's an opportunity for another amendment. Would that be correct?
Ms Newman?
Through you, Deputy Mayor. So we have an alternative motion on the table. Councillor Ettinger is seeking to amend the alternative motion to what was intended by Councillor Ross. It was identified at the November Council meeting that there was an error in the motion that had been moved. So this is really just bringing it back to what Councillor Ross intended to move at the November meeting. And then once that is done, the debate will commence on the intended motion.
Councillor Lim?
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. I think I mixed it around. So with the alternate motion being moved by Councillor Ross, is there an opportunity for the seconder to become the mover?
Ms Newman?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, no, the motion has been moved and seconded, and we are now picking up from the point in debate where we left off. It's not unusual when a deferral happens of this nature to not have either the mover or seconder present, and we just continue on.
Councillor Lim, you can reserve your right to speak until the end of debate.
Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay, so clear as mud. So we have an amendment on the table by Councillor Ettinger Is there any voice to the contrary? No? I declare that carried. Thank you. Now we will proceed to Councillor Barber's amendment. Councillor, do you wish to proceed?
Yes, I do, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. If so, can I have a seconder? I believe Councillor Green wants to second this motion. Thank you.
Yes, I do.
Councillor Barber, please introduce your motion.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is an extension of what Councillor Ross placed on the table relating to the Canning Bridge Activity Centre Plan review. I feel I speak for the council that we feel like we're doing everything the Department of Lands and Heritage has asked. We've employed a consultant and we're trying it the best by our community. On that note, I do want to publicly thank the Community Reference Group. The expertise on that group is outstanding and they work really hard. I know that they're disappointed, as are we as a council, in the late requests and late information that the DPLH are asking of us, and I certainly hope things improve. I know Councillor Green will mention that in his seconding. The first point, which is slightly different than Councillor Ross's, is that the DPLH want us to consider having community benefits for Bonus Heights. And the idea is that we start at an initial 10% assessment rate as a financial contribution by developers and as a community benefit. And certainly a financial community benefit will be much better than bike racks and lockers. So it's a really good initial starting place. Further in the amendment is, you'll note we've taken out the term net community benefit. This was discussed by elected members at the agenda briefing forum. There was some thought it was a fairly nebulous term. However, we've taken it out, but we've asked the scope to still consider the amenity impacts should Bonus Heights be achieved. It's still important for consultants to look at all the impacts of Bonus Heights, whether they be positive or negative. And if we listen to what Mr Katucci said about our own local planning scheme number 6, and he was talking about traffic and infrastructure, there's certainly room for us to look at the negative impacts and positive impacts if we can get some really good infrastructure, and we hope that DPLH are looking at that as well. In point 4, we've stated, as per the OMC of April the 18th, that the City of Melville will not permit any further extension of time requests. Personally, I'm a little bit worried about that, as I know some, and I also know some members of the community worry about this, because is this feasible? Currently, there's a deadline, I believe, of December 31, 2024. There's no way that we're going to reach that deadline, and I was wondering, you know, should we have an extension? But having spoken to a few of my councillors, they're not entirely sure of that. But I would possibly like to ask somebody from planning to ask what are the repercussions if we still have this in this alternative motion? Will there be repercussions? So once we receive clarity on that from our planning department here tonight, I hope that you'll accept this amendment. So thank you, everybody. And Deputy Mayor, could I please ask for a response from planning as to whether, keeping on this amendment, that we have got no time extensions, will there be repercussions? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Just to be clear, you introduce your motion and you ask a question. Yeah,
Yes, I did do that. Am I allowed to do that?
Yes, you are. I'll
Thank
let you
you.
do that. Mr Vrellis, thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Barber. The allowing the extension of time to lapse provides the city an option to appeal. It is not compelled to appeal, and the DPLH cannot request an appeal. The city is the proponent in this instance. The WAPC are the respondent. If the extension of time runs out, the application can still be assessed by DPLH without having to go to appeal. The appeal is an option available only to the city, and by allowing that time to lapse, that is an option available.
Thank you, Mr Vrellis. Where are we? Seconder. Who was the seconder?
Oh, I have a question.
Sorry, hang on. What's going on?
I have a question.
Who was the seconder first? Okay. Councillor Ettinger.
So in the reasons for the amendment, on page 2, under item 4, there's actually a item C, which I believe was probably meant to be incorporated into the red text. C which is affirm the council's position as resolved on April 18, 2023 OMC, that no bonus heights be issued, and to note by extension of this resolution that the council is opposed to the late inclusion of higher plot ratios. I believe that this was, am I correct? Yes.
Absolutely, yes. And I thought the alternative motion as amended would read as follows, and everything in black under the red, 1, 2, 3 and 4 should be included in that alternate motion.
Okay, we'll just get some clarity on that from governance. I thought that that part C got removed. Governance just updating that, just a few moments, okay? Just a couple of minutes. Okay, so we'll continue on. The governance are updating that. Thank you for raising that point. Councillor Green, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll speak now, thank you. I'll speak now to, firstly, to sort of clarify to all elected members that Councillor Barber and I have been working together on this final amendment. Well, possibly not the final, but the latest amendment. Yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't get it out in time for Friday afternoon, but yeah, sort of, I think it was yesterday that it came out as the latest version, which does include that 4C, affirm the council's position as resolved in April 18th, on April 18th, 23 for the IMC, that no bonus heights be issued, and to note by extension of this resolution that the council is opposed to the late inclusion of higher plot ratios. That was input from me, I guess we could say, we're in agreement with Glynis. So moving on from that, I was compelled to work with Glynis on this motion together with Glynis, Councillor Barber, because I believe that despite differences of opinion in the Canning Bridge area on other matters, I think from our recent discussions on this matter, we've really been quite, I won't go as far as say use the word united, but very, very firmly in agreement that the late inclusion of the excessive plot ratios were unacceptable to the vast majority of us. That's my belief from our discussions, and I think it's an opportunity for us to demonstrate to Department of Land's state government body that we do stand firmly in agreement with this, that we are opposed to bonus heights as the April 23 council resolution demonstrated in a resounding majority decision that no bonus heights should be issued. So I thought it would be a good thing to stand together with Councillor Barber and come up with something that we were both in agreement with, and to try and send a firm message that as a council we are opposed to the bonus heights and the excessive plot ratios. Some other areas that Councillor Barber and I discussed were the concept of community benefit, net community benefit, essentially entails benefits and disbenefits. I put to the discussion that this benefits are somewhat qualitative rather than quantitative and hard to measure, and therefore there's going to be a reluctance for consultants to take that work on. And even if they did, it would be time-consuming, expensive, and it just to me seems that would drag the process on further. We all want to see progress in and at some point an end in sight with what's going on in Canning Bridge. So that was another thing. I initially was looking at removing net community benefit altogether, but through discussion and compromise with Councillor Barber, we came up with the concept of impact rather than net community benefit. And impact is something that's perhaps more quantifiable, and therefore if consultants can identify impacts to the Canning Bridge area, we can perhaps identify where responsibilities lie as well. So, such as the state government providing surrounding infrastructure, things like road widening and access to the train station, these sorts of things. And lastly, I think what we wanted to convey was to, lastly but certainly not least, was a strong message to the community. I think we've been put between a rock and a hard place to some extent with this situation. How far do we work with the Department of Lands? How far do we push back with knowing that ultimately they can sort of do what they like about this, but how do we work with them and how do we drive a hard bargain for the community? And I think ultimately we just have to be true to ourselves as a council, and the resounding vote in April of 2023 was no bonus heights. So I think we should be sticking to that and sending a strong message that we are opposed to that. We don't want to see very high density, something almost resembling St George's Terrace and Canning Bridge.
Thanks, Councillor Green. It's time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've had a speaker for and... No, we've had the motion introduced. We've had the second to speak. Is there anyone against this amendment? As there's no one against, I declare that carried. Thank you. Now, we're going to move now to the City of Melville Officer Advice Note, and Mr Ponton would like to speak on scenario 4. Is that right?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. If elected members have the advice note and also recall the information sessions in relation to the late further revisions to scenario 4 that we received from Department of Planning, in terms of what would be preferable in the scope for the further information request, Council may wish to consider the revised scenario 4 information and to incorporate that into the resolution by a further amendment. So we've highlighted it in the advice note and to ensure that the scope of the further information request responds to what DPLH will be looking for. We would ask that be considered.
Thank you, Mr Ponton. Councillor Green, do you want to turn your microphone off, please? Councillor Edinger.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just wondering exactly which advice note. Was it the one that was circulated separately to the minutes, the agenda? I haven't found it yet. Thanks.
It's the, I was going to say the item UP 2454, Director of Planning advice note, but that's really not giving you much information at all. I can show you a picture what it looks like, because that might help. It's got some nice charts on it with blue squares. What's different than a normal advice note? It's like that. Oh, yeah. Mr. Varelis.
Through the Chair, to assist with providing some clarity, at the EMES last week and on follow-up emails to councillors, the Department of Planning provided another revision which was lesser than what was provided earlier. So that's what's being presented as part of this advice note, is the DPLH's third round of revised plot ratios that are lesser than the second round that was being considered in November.
Thank you. So we've just heard from Mr. Ponton about revised scenario 4. Is there any appetite around the room to do anything with that? Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Councillor Robbins, do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? Councillor Lim, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Robbins?
Nothing to say other than I think it's more consistent with what the community would like to see, and it's not as overreaching as what we had previously.
So, if I may, as I would like to ask my own question, have the CRG seen this scenario, Mr. Varelis?
Through the Chair, further to the EMB last week, this information has been provided to Council and the CRG. Correct.
And was there any feedback from the CRG?
They were happy to see that the numbers had slightly reduced. I know it's not a significant reduction, it's a slight reduction, but nonetheless a reduction.
Could I just ask
Robbins.
just a follow-up question to that, Mr. Varelis? So the CRG's position has been that, or their preferred option is that council adopts the draft scope of works without the inclusion of DPLH requested plot ratio analysis. Is that still the position of the CRG, even with the most recent changes from DPLH?
Mr. Varelis.
Through the Chair, recalling Mr. Kenny's deputation last month, they reluctantly agreed to include the DPLH's request at that point in time, which was a higher plot ratio request in the interest of progressing a study and moving forward with the process. The new information that's come from the department is now lesser than what the CRG were willing to reluctantly accept in November. And my conversations with members of the CRG have been that that's appreciative that the DPLH have slightly adjusted their plot ratios. And in the context of Council's position being that there is formal position from April being that there's no bonus heights, the fact that you're entertaining a further information request is in the interests of working with the state government to arrive at an outcome, noting that you don't support what's being worked on, and what's been provided previously was significant plot ratios, and then what's been revised now is slightly less. I think it makes sense to proceed, but nonetheless, that's a decision for Council.
Thank you, Mr. Varelis. Councillor Green.
Yeah, just a question through you.
Question, yes, please.
Yeah, it's in my mind, I've sort of simplified what's come back from the DPLH. We were at one point talking about plot ratios that would enable 9 36-storey towers in Canning Bridge region, and it's my understanding that the latest comeback from the DPLH would basically facilitate 30 as opposed to 36.
Is that your question? Yep. Mr. Varelis?
Through the Chair, I can confirm that.
Thank you. So we've got the motion, the amendment we've got on the table at the moment, moved by Councillor Robbins, seconded by Councillor Lim, is on the screen right now, and it's that the revised scenario 4 be incorporated into the further information request project scope as it responds to the further information being sought by the DPLH. We've heard from Mr. Varelis. He said that this is actually less than what the CRG were reluctantly willing to accept in the first place when it first came down in the first instance. So we've heard Speaker 4 Councillor Lim, would you like to reserve your right? Or?
For that one, I think it's really just yes they have reduced the plot ratio from 9.6 to I believe is 7.5 last week. So this means the bonus heights reduced from 36 to 30. I still think that just to give everyone clarity, the CRG is still not. I'm not speaking on behalf of them. I'm just sort of, in my understanding, is scenario 4 is not even a concept that they're willing to even explore, because I think even scenario 1 itself is already pushing the CRG to its absolute limits. So really, I'm glad that DPRH is taking the step in the right direction, but it's still far beyond what the community expects.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Is there a speaker against? As there's no speaker against, I'll declare that carried. Thank you.
Did we vote on it, did we?
Well, I asked for a speaker
did
against.
Daniel speak against?
No, he spoke as the seconder of the amendment.
Oh, right, for the amendment.
So it's a further amendment, Glenn. So now we've had, righto, let's unpack this. What page are we on? Okay. Okay, so we now move to the substantive alternative. Councillors, please focus. Come on, we're nearly there. It's really hard to keep up. We now move to the substantive alternative motion as amended, which was moved by Councillor Ross and seconded by Councillor Lim at the November ordinary meeting of Council, noting that we've had 3 amendments that have been accepted and incorporated into the into the alternative. Oh God, into the alternative motion, and that is on the screen. Is that right? Ish, it's coming up. So now we're returning to the alternative motion as amended by Councillor Ross, and I believe that Councillor Lim is going to reserve his right to speak at the end of the debate. Is there anyone who would like to speak against this? No? No? Councillor Lim, do you want to?
I just have a technical change.
So another amendment?
No, just item 2. It should be not including, just it should be include the singular.
Okay, to include the following components? Yep, that's good grammar, yep. Okay, we okay to just incorporate that? Okay, so there's no speakers against?
Deputy Mayor, may I ask the Director, Peter Varellis, a question, please? Just looking at it at the moment, it seems to be really quite complex and a little bit convoluted. So therefore, if it becomes too hard, is there a possibility that DPLH will just throw caution to the wind and they may take on Canning Bridge themselves? Thank you.
Mr. Varellis?
Through the chair, I'm not in a position to provide a response on that. That's a matter for the state government.
Thank you. And look, I think that the motion is very detailed, but they're all little steps, or they're all steps that will move. So we're asking, it's on the screen. So there's no speakers against, then I declare it carried. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, for your focus on that. I would like to invite Councillor Lee to return to the meeting. And we are... Yep, here comes Corinne now. Councillors, we've just got a little bit of an issue, so just bear with us. Okay, Council, I am going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes while this is unpacked. So go and take a comfort break, go and stretch your legs and return here in 5 minutes. Thank you. Mindful that we have a lot to get through. Thank you. So, councillors, can we get everyone back in the room, please? Forthwith. Toot sweet. Who are we waiting on? Councillor Spanbrook. Okay.
Oh, Terry's back in the room.
Councillor Lee, I invite you to leave again, please. We need to do something, so I invite you to leave. Sorry. No, I've changed my mind. Could you ask Councillor Spanbrook to come back in the room, please, just so we can rectify something? Thank you. Councillors, what we're going to do, we are going to reopen the item we just decided upon, just so we can make an administrative amendment. Sorry, Councillor Spanbrook, I'll wait till you get back in. Just to clear this up, we have to do this, so we're going to reopen the item to make an administrative amendment. It's on the screen to the resolution by removing the words in brackets as contained in attachment 3 from point 1 to read, request the Chief Executive Officer to amend attachment 1 to include the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage additional requests. And now this is in relation to, attachment 3 spoke to 36 stories and the new recommendation, point 5, spoke to 30. So we wanted the 30 and not the 36, so we're just making that clear. It clarifies the intent of the council with that last moving of the alternative motion as amended, and now as amended. So, Councillor Robbins, so point 1 referred to an attachment that spoke to 36 stories with the plot ratios, I believe. Is that right? Yep. And we're just saying to include the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage additional request, which was the revised option 4. Yep. So, who would like to move that amendment? Councillor Ettinger, Councillor Barber seconded. Any voice to the contrary? No, I declare that carried. Thank you. Councillor Lee can come back into the room. Thank you. Mr. Varelis, are you happy with that? It's all. It's
through the chair. It's not for me to be happy.
Oh no. I mean, like from a planning perspective. Sorry, that was probably.
Through the chair, that is implementable and what was intended based on the discussions and briefings at the elected member engagement session last week.
Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Waiting on Councillor Lee, I will continue to speak. We're nearly finished. UP 2455, review of LPP 1.4, provision of public art in development proposals. Now, prior to tabling the officer recommendation, I would like to remind Council that we've received an alternative motion with notice from Councillor Spanbrook. As it is an alternative motion with notice, this will be considered first, and I advise Council that an officer advice note was distributed in relation to the alternative motion. Additionally, I remind Council that Councillor Ettinger is declaring an impartiality interest under the Code of Conduct and will stay and discuss. Councillor Spanbrook, do you wish to proceed with your alternative motion?
Yes, I do, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, if so, can I please have a seconder? Hang on.
Apologies, Madam Mayor. I just wondered, do we need a vote on Councillor Edinger, or is this not one that requires a vote? Apologies.
Sorry, it's an impartiality interest and it's not required to have a vote. I actually thought that too, but told myself in my head, no, she doesn't, because it's not financial. So can I please seconder for seconded Councillor Woodall? Councillor Spanbrook, please introduce your motion. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. First of all, I'd just like to reiterate to the elected members that the only change to this is a word change. In place of having require local government to contribute from the city works to 1% to public art, it's only to encourage local government for 1% of public art contributions. So it's just from require to encourage. That's the only change. And the reason for this is that with the city being required to pay at the moment, the current policy required to pay 1% of the construction costs, that I see this as an impost to ratepayers, which there already is. The ratepayers are already paying for the actual construction of the development as it is, let alone having to pay an additional 1%. And there was a spreadsheet that was actually emailed out to all elected members, and from the director. And as you may notice, the amount budgeted for public arts, the public arts program, and arts and concerts for 24-25 is $1.25 million, and the city pay. That's an astonishing amount of money that the city pay, which I'm not disputing, which is fantastic. But let's pull it back a bit with regard to public art, and I will provide an example, because there will be some areas that do not require public art because they already have it. A classic example is Burragoon Leisure Fit, which has recently undergone quite a massive refurbishment at $10 million plus, and Burragoon Leisure Fit currently has a wonderful piece of public art there right at the front. And however, with $10 million and under the current policy, the city is also then required to contribute 1% of the construction costs, and which means we'll have another piece of public art. So that is an example of unnecessary expense. And also there could very well be, or potentially developments in the future where the location of them, that the public art may not be suitable, nor will it get to be seen or reviewed by within the community. And I would just like for council to support this. And I'll just reiterate, $1.25 million that's been budgeted for 24-25 for arts concerts and public arts program. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. Councillor Woodall, would you like to speak now?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against this motion? Councillor Edinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The percentage for art scheme is actually a government scheme which was established by Cabinet in 1989. It's a state government initiative which requires new Western Australian government buildings. So that includes buildings that we build because we're a local government, and major additions with an estimated total building cost greater than $2 million to allocate up to 1% of the capital cost of the building to the Commission of Public Artwork from West Australian artists. I've declared an impartiality interest in this item because I work for a company that works with artists who benefit from public art. This has been a brilliant initiative. It has brought art to the masses. As you drive around the whole metropolitan area, there's interesting, quirky, funny, beautiful art all over the place. It gives people something to talk about. If you've got little kids, you can get them to look out for art as you're driving along. It's allowed artists to make their living doing what they love. And lots of people don't get that opportunity. I don't, but one day I might. As an artist, who knows? But if, as a city, we decide to go it alone and make it optional, it puts us out of step with a state government initiative. It's not a good look from that perspective. and it also disadvantages our artistic community. That we're spending $1.2 million of our rates on things that include concerts and arts is neither here nor there in the context of this conversation. What we are looking at is the built environment and the provision of public art in relation to the built environment. So for that reason, I looked up the percent for arts green brochures. Unfortunately, they stopped in 2019. I think they were a victim of COVID. But in 2019, buildings that had public art put on them were included Averley North Primary School, Carnarvon Community College, Cunderdin Health Centre, the Dolphin Discovery Centre redevelopment Bunbury, Inglewood Primary School, Merredin Health Service, Narrogin Health Campus. We've put art out at health campuses. It's amazing art. You know, this is for the community as a whole, and I'm sorry that Councillor Spanbrook doesn't feel that way. I'm sorry that she feels that it's misuse and improper use of ratepayers' funds, but this is a state government initiative. It's not, to me, it's not an optional extra. It's a requirement because it's a state government initiative. So I urge you all to support our artists, to be in lockstep with the rest of the state, and to vote against this alternative motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ettinger. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Woodall.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, with this amendment, I support it. What Councillor Spanbrook is trying to do is to say that in respect of City of Melville projects only, that the percent for art is encouraged but not mandatory, and so it's assessed on a case-by-case basis. So, for example, Councillor Spanbrook brought up the subject of the new Leisure Fit Centre. If it already has public artwork there may not be much added benefit in another piece of public artwork at that location. It may be better to spread the public artwork at locations which don't have them. Another example, and 1%, I just touch on the 1%. If you take 1% of that was around approximately $10 million project. If you take the new Library and Cultural Centre, we're talking about maybe $60 million potentially in construction costs. That's $600,000 worth of public art. That's a huge cost, and I question if the ratepayers will be getting value for money out of that when Garden City, given their redevelopment is likely to be far in excess of that, are going to be forced to provide the 1% under our policy, which could be spread around the Garden City perimeter, and therefore may not require ratepayers to fork out quite as much. At the end of the day, I think we should look at it on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, it may be that the whole 1% is not required. The state government's percent for art scheme talks about encouraging and using a percentage. It says up to 1%. It doesn't say 1%. So I think there's flexibility in that. And we also, I think, need to look at getting value for money from public art. There's definitely a lot of public art around Perth. Some of it is perhaps of higher quality and better than others. Some of it is effectively, I think, ratepayers and taxpayers subsidising artists who may not otherwise have an income because the public don't want to actually buy their artwork or public art.
Sorry, I think that's a negative reflection on artists.
Sorry, councillors, is that a point of order? What's your point of order?
He's made a negative reflection on the people in our art community.
Councillor Woodall.
I'm not. I'm simply, that's my personal opinion. I'm simply making the point that I don't think necessarily they could be in that line of work if not for the subsidy of ratepayers. That was my point. Because the public would not be buying their artwork. That was my point. So, and I stand by that. So that, I think in relation to city facilities, it's something we should look at. I think Councillor Spanbrook's amendment provides the flexibility without forcing us into the fixed 1%, and I think it's quite sensible, so I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Woodall. Now, speaker against? Yep, Councillor Lim, thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor. So I think I'm against it because the city is, in the example of the Leisure Fit Centre, yes, like, certain people have different opinions around the need for an additional artwork there, since there was already one. But I believe that the city, because of this benefit of the 15% discount in cash in lieu, that money can actually, the city would generally try to opt in for that cash in lieu option. So that money will be reinvested back into that particular region. I don't have it with me right now, but this allows the city to, it will actually give the city more flexibility to do more temporary and, excuse me, is it as ephemeral art in that area? So it's not just locked into leisure fit, but like it's actually benefiting whenever there's a major project in that area, it will benefit the surrounding areas as well, and giving back art to wherever development is happening. So I think that is something that we should strive to keep and try to lead by example, because if the city is encouraged to do it and not required, we're not really signaling the right message to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lim. Is there a speaker for? Councillor Barber, you're first. Sorry, Councillor Fitzgerald.
Councillor Fitzgerald. I'll be quick so Councillor Fitzgerald can have a turn. I just wanted to speak in favour of the alternate motion. I like the word encourage. It takes the requirement out of it. I see the City of Melville as valuing art very highly, and it just means that we can discriminate should the need arise.
So you're supporting discrimination?
No, I'm discriminate as in we can discriminate whether we choose to put... Stop putting words in my...
You said it.
I said, no, we can discriminate as to whether we decide to put the public art up or not.
Is that a different word you meant?
No, I said you can discriminate against which art. Is that, have I used the right word, Councillor Fitzgerald? Councillor Fitzgerald said I'm right. So you can discriminate between different types of art, and so I like the word encourage because it means that we can choose. Would that be better, Deputy Mayor? We can choose which art we decide to put up. But I see the City of Melville, who value art very highly, I don't see that this is going to be a detriment.
Thank you. Is there any speakers against? If there's no more speakers against, I'll go back to you, Councillor Spanbrook, and ask you to wrap up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And I'd like to thank those supporting the motion and for their commentary. I appreciate that. I would like to note, though, that Councillor Edinger does have has declared an impartiality interest to this item, and so therefore it is in her interest. It is in her interest to speak against it. Now, however, my interest is in the community. I was making a point. My interest is in the community, and and if the city can reduce its cost, then I think this is a worthwhile alternate motion. And as I said, it's just a change of words, just to provide an option for the city or the council to decide whether there should be public art contributed from this development or another development. It's not saying it's not going to provide anything at all. However, I would also just like to mention that private enterprise, they are required to contribute a percentage of the construction cost to public art. And when you consider the potential for public art to be well and truly provided for, when you consider the activity centres that are yet to be developed, and so therefore it could be really quite a tidy sum. And even if I take you down, you think about the Canning Bridge Activity Centre precinct and the continued development down there, that will also provide, quite a generous amount for towards public art. So I do ask elected members to please consider the ratepayers, and if we can reduce the costs wherever we can, and I certainly think that's worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you. While we're moving to the vote, I just want to make a comment that this fits into our strategic plan, and creatives across the City of Melville are also ratepayers. And yeah, now let's vote. Thanks. There you go. Thank you. That's carried 8-3. We now return to the officer recommendation. Can I have a... Oh, it's an alternative, so it's gone. All right, we'll keep going. We're going back now to UP 2456, which is scope and resourcing requirements to progress site planning and development investigations for 67 to 69 Canning Beach Road and 2 Kintail Road, Applecross. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation, please? Councillor Barber moved, seconded. Councillor Green. Councillor Edinger, you asked this to be removed from the en-bloc items. Did you want to debate this? Yep, okay. Councillor Barber, would you like to introduce your motion?
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. To be honest, I'm not particularly prepared, but this is something that I put up a while ago, and I think it is a very strategic piece of land that the city could look at for a variety of reasons. Community benefits, financial benefits, benefits all round, I believe. Councillor Edinger may have an argument about that, but it is a very strategic piece of land. We should allow the money so that we do a good scope of works, and I hope that you'll, I hope that you'll support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Green, would you like to speak now? Reserve your right.
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Any voices to the contrary? Councillor Edinger.
Thank you. I don't believe a report should be prepared for this land. I think we should just leave the land as it is. It's at the moment, it's in an area that is rapidly becoming overdeveloped, and it is a low-rise, it has 2 low-rise buildings on it. One is a heritage building, has a car park that has some beautiful lemon-scented gums. It has much needed parking. One of the options has been to build a car park, woohoo, probably with no public art because we've just passed an amendment about that. But I think we need the people who live in that area and the people who drive past need some low-rise to look at rather than just a wall of high-rise stuff. And if we leave it as it is, then we can save ourselves $80,000, which could go towards public art, and or move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edinger. Speaker for the motion, Councillor Green, would you like to speak now? If there's no other speakers.
Yes, I will. Yes, I believe that this is a strategic piece of land. I think an important path that we should be going down is to be seeking alternative revenue streams to relieve rates rises for ratepayers. I believe our city is relatively highly reliant on rates as opposed to other alternative revenue streams compared to other comparable local governments around Western Australia. So in that sense, I believe it's important. The other thing I think is, I believe is important is that we need to try to get the best bang for our buck from our city-owned assets, and I think looking into ways of doing that is a perfectly reasonable thing to be doing. I think that area is certainly has a lot of potential. I think there's a lot of value down there and a lot of money being made by property developers. There seems to be a opposition to the city doing that and delivering a return on investment for ratepayers. I don't see why property developers should get all the cake. We should be able to deliver a good return for ratepayers as well, and therefore I think this opportunity should be explored further.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
Sorry, I just have a clarification question about this as well. At the end of the report, it states that $60,000, the estimated cost of the study is $80,000, which is not currently budgeted for, And then it goes on to say the cost of a project resource is estimated at approximately $60,000 in addition to the estimated $80,000. Where's the $60,000 coming from? Is it out of the operating budget? Like, is this project resource, is this someone already on board? Is it going to be a contractor?
Thank you, Mr Verlis.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, Councillor Ettinger. As part of the report, it spoke to the option of council bringing this project forward. At the moment, the officer recommendation speaks to listing it for consideration in the budget next year. And if that's listed for consideration in the budget next year, we would adjust our project scheduling accordingly and assimilate this project for next calendar year. If council was of a view to bring this project forward and for us to commence it during this financial year, we don't have the resource at this time for this project because we have other strategic planning projects that those resources are on. So if it was to be brought forward, there'd be a need for a resource now. If it's listed for next financial year, we'd use our existing resource pool and reprioritise projects accordingly.
Thank you, Mr Verlis. Is there another speaker against? There are no more speakers against. I'll go back to Councillor Barber. You can wrap up.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I just want to talk to Councillor Ettinger's concerns and just note that this is a scope of works and the consultants or the city officers actually may suggest a low-rise recommendation with public art and retain lemon-scented gums. So we don't know. At this stage, it is just a scope of works and we can only hope that they do a great job. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. We'll go to the vote. I declare that carried 10 votes to 1. Oh my goodness, what am I doing? Okay, so now we are... Okay, now we move on to motions with previous notice. Yes? This motion is proposed by Councillor Barber. Councillor, do you wish to proceed?
Yes, please.
Yes, if so, can I please have a seconder for this motion? Yes. Councillor Fitzgerald. Councillor Barber, please introduce your motion. Is there any opposition to this? No opposition?
Probably not, but can I say something anyway?
Just make it
be
quick.
I'm really quick. Look, everybody, I'm a bit dark on the state government tonight. I was a bit dark on DPLH and I'm a bit dark on main roads. There's a intersection in Adelaide called Canning Highway, Rome Road and Hislop Road. And can you believe it? In the last 6 years, there's been 29 crashes and 6 casualties. This is completely unacceptable. Now, the City of Melville has been negotiating with main roads for 6 years and beyond to try and get them to install pedestrian safety, road safety traffic signals, and nothing's happened. Accidents are still occurring. The main roads did install a $1.4 million crosswalk at the bottom of a steep hill heading up Canning Highway in the westerly direction. And this, it's not working very well. I worry because I still see people running across Canning Highway, pedestrians, and we're still having crashes. So it's not working. We've got a new advocacy policy and I'm asking that the city advocate to local politicians. I'm asking for the CEO to write to the Minister for Transport, and we really owe it to our residents to make this as safe as possible. And so I hope you'll support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. As there is no voice to the contrary, I declare that Councillor Lee.
The question to Councillor Barber, that intersection, instead of having more traffic lights, there are already traffic lights down by the service station. So would you write to them about having a walkover? Is that what you were saying? Because installing traffic lights may not be the solution. That's my thought.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'm no main roads expert, but our city officers have negotiated. I don't think we've got the room on Canning Highway to have an overpass, but I think that something needs to be looked at, and I think they should brainstorm all types of ideas to try and make this intersection safer. You're right, there's consequences to having traffic lights, but there's consequences to them blocking off Norma Road, which has created a traffic jam leading onto North Lake Road. And that's terrible. They really need to change that. So the whole section of Canning Highway in Alfred Cove, Adderdale really needs to be looked at.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Is there any voice to the contrary? If not, I declare that carried. Thank you. Now, the next motion, all right, bear with me, is, yeah, I've got it, just get it up there. Is proposed by Councillor Spanbrook, and I advise that an officer advice note has been distributed in relation to this motion. Councillor, do you wish to proceed with this motion?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. If so, I would like to have a seconder. Councillor Woodall, thank you. So I just want to ask a question before we move forward. In the officer advice note, just to expedite the process, there is an alternative recommendation with slightly altered dates for it to come back, because what I understand is the council and the city is already working on this motion as it's written, but the timeframes that you've got in your motion are not likely to be met. So would you consider incorporating the alternative recommendation in the advice note? Have you got the advice note? It says, request the CEO to present the investigation 2A, 2B to an OMC, Ordinary Council meeting, by June 2025 for consideration and further direction, and also request the Chief Executive Officer to present the investigation 2C and 2D to an elected member engagement session by December 2025 for consideration and further direction. So that would alter your time frames go from April to June in part 3 and in part 4 from August to December. Would you do that?
May I say, what concerns me with this is that it is quite some time away, and also there is an election in October, and I am part of that election. And as a mover of this motion, that I am concerned that things change and anything can happen. And if this were to go beyond October, as what's been proposed, which is December, then I can't guarantee that as the mover of the motion that I will be here. I would like to be here, but that's just the way it is. But in saying that, I also don't wish for the officers to be rushed into it. And excuse me a moment.
While you're conferring, Mr Varellis, can I ask a question? If these dates were not to change, what impact then would this have on other projects that are already planned within the long-term financial plan?
Through the chair, I'll defer to the Director of Community Development, if that's okay.
Well, you're on the hot seat tonight, Pete, thanks. Marielle? No, Ms Pickering, I forgot about.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Deputy Mayor. We've got a number of projects that this particular team is working through at the moment, including the Morris Buzzercott Reserve, the netball needs assessment, the RS review. That's just 3 from the top of my head, but they've got quite a significant workload. So those projects would need to be juggled to accommodate to bring this one forward.
Councillor Spanbrook.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. In saying that, then I'm happy for the dates from the officers to be incorporated in my motion, as I am quite confident that Councillor Woodall will pursue this if things were to change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook. Councillor Woodall, will you accept that? Okay, so that's a really good outcome. So now we have Councillor Spanbrook's motion, which is on the screen, incorporated with 3 and 4 from the officer advice note. Is there any voice to the contrary on this? I will give you an opportunity to speak, but if there's no voice to the contrary, Councillor Spanbrook, if you would like to speak to this and your reasons why, and then we'll go to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll give a bit of a blurb to it, so I'll try and keep it brief and under 5 minutes. When I campaigned back in 21, I did a lot of door knocking, and there was one thing that stood out that the community was screaming out for, and that was for a nice place to go to socialise with family or friends, have a drink, eat, and nothing better than having an area where the children can run around, play and have fun. This area is Peter Ellis. It's an amazing, it is an amazing area and has great potential and is a beautiful ground. The demographics of Leeming are evolving, with young professional families wanting more within their local community, as have families with grown children. Peter Ellis is used all the time by the Bull Creek Leeming Footy Club, Leeming Spartan Cricket Club, the Leeming Netball Club, and the Bull Creek Tennis Club would also like to utilise the courts there. Looking at the reviews of Leeming, and the general feedback is that Leeming is a nice place to live, but nothing to do and nowhere for the locals to go and socialise. I then approached the Community Development Director, Muriel Pickering, and she mentioned that they were going to do a review of the Leeming Recreation Centre, and I discussed the idea of including Peter Ellis as part of that review. I have worked with the officers on this proposal to ensure my intentions are capable of operational implementation and can assimilate with the existing Leeming Rec Centre project currently listed in the annual budget. The officers advised that including Peter Ellis is a cost-efficient way to go about it, and it is good timing and will link in with the investigation that is being developed. As the Leeming Rec Centre review is going to happen anyway, having Peter Ellis incorporated in the review will bring the two projects together by adding a little to the scope of work that is already taking place. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a very long time. It's not a thought bubble. Most of the people would know that I've been speaking about it since 21, since I became a councillor, and so I seek your support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spanbrook, and I declare that motion carried unanimously. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
We now move on to confidential items for this evening, and does anyone wish to discuss the contents of this confidential item? And that item is CD 2437, Community Safety Service Review. No? Okay. Well, as no one wants to discuss it, we don't need to go behind closed doors. Can I have a mover and a seconder for this motion, please? That is moved Councillor Green, seconded Councillor Barber. Is there any opposition to this item? As there are not, I declare that carried. Thank you. Yes. For the purposes of the minutes item, oh no, we don't need to say that because we can go to... With the acceptance of our 2023-2024 annual report this evening, I would like to advise that the City's annual general meeting of electors has tentatively been set for Monday the 3rd of February 2025. Information and details on the AGM will be on our website soon. This brings us to the closure of the last ordinary meeting of Council for 2024. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Apologies, Councillor Wheatland. I had anticipated there would be an urgent business section. I may have missed it earlier in proceedings. Apologies, because it happens so rarely, I had thought it was at the end rather than the beginning. I only wanted to note the very recent, I understand it was this weekend, declaration of a red and orange zone for Q-fly, the Queensland fruit fly, and that residents, particularly in Palmyra, Melville and Willagee, but also some surrounding suburbs, I don't want to say them because I'm not 100% certain, have been urged to have a look at the department's website because there are specific quarantine requirements for taking fruit in and out. Fruit should not be disposed of in the green top bin, as ordinarily is the case. It should be disposed of in the red top bin. And unfortunately, you will need to check varieties of fruit, but many varieties of fruit trees, if you've got them in your backyard, will need to have fruit stripped and destroyed. The Queensland fruit fly is a dangerous and invasive species. The good news is we have beaten it previously and can beat it again, but it will require everyone sort of working together. I've seen this is very recent and very developing, so I'd encourage everyone to go have a look on the department's website and see precisely what it is. I know that the City of Melville has been sharing that information, but I would also just encourage more generally that everyone use their social media pages, their engagement with the community to let everyone know that, you know, this is a requirement, because the message is getting out, albeit slowly, and anything we'd do to make sure people are aware of that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzgerald, for raising that. Now, this brings us to the closure of the last ordinary meeting of Council for 2024. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Mayor to thank elected members, the CEO and staff, past and present, for their efforts throughout the year, and to wish all of you, your families, and our community a safe and happy festive period and prosperous new year. I want to pay particular attention to the governance staff for managing and running and looking after our meetings and everything that we do. So thank you. It goes to all staff too, but just wanted to make that note. Please take the time, everyone, to rest and recharge, and I look forward to working with you all in 2025 as we collectively work together towards our goal of achieving an inclusive, vibrant and sustainable future for our community. Now, who wants to sing a Christmas carol? No, I'm joking. So thank you. Oh, Councillor Barber.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. And on behalf of the elected members, the CEO and staff, I would like to wish you joy and peace this Christmas season, and the Mayor, who is currently in Europe with her family, and I'm sure she's having lots of joy and peace. And we wish you success and happiness for next year. Like you, on behalf of all the councillors, I'd like to wish the staff a very Merry Christmas. The city staff have written something, so I probably should say it. This time of year is our chance to stop and reflect on all we have achieved together and to anticipate all the opportunities that are ahead of us. I hope, Councillor Woodall, that you take seriously what Councillor Spanbrook said and don't let her motion fall over. Councillor Spanbrook, you better door knock really hard so you get back in next October. But our future looks bright. I'm hoping for better Christmas lights next year, so that'll make the future look really bright. But let's face it, we've got a terrific council. All the councillors are great people, and we certainly live in a great city. So a very safe and happy Christmas to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Now, for the purpose of the minutes, we don't have anyone attending electronically except for Mr Tuffin. So thank you, Mr Tuffin, for sitting there online all night on standby, ready to give your expert professional opinion to anything that we need. Thank you. And there be no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 21:56. And if we all just pause for a minute before we speak, and we'll close the...